All right, good evening. Good evening. We are going to go ahead and get our first meeting called to order. We are starting with the URA tonight, so if you can do the roll call, please, ma'am.
Councilor Schwartz.
Present.
Councilor Rhoden.
Here.
Councilor Robert.
Here.
Councilor Martin Willis.
Here.
Councilor Martin.
Here.
Councilor Stewart. Councilor Forrest.
Here.
Alright, and Mayor Swartz.
Yes, I'm in. All right, and are the meeting minutes for,
Yeah, we have your idea from previous meetings.
okay, great, thank you for that reminder. So we do have the regular, meeting minutes from October and January. Motion?
Move to approve is received.
Second. Motion by Councilor Morton, second by Councilor Martin Willis, any discussion? Motion or roll call please?
Councilor Forrest.
Aye.
Councilor Norton.
Aye.
Councilor Martin Willis.
Aye.
Councilor Robert.
Aye.
Councilor Rhoden. Councilor Schwartz.
Aye.
Thank you, and do we have any visitor public comments for the URA? All right, moving on, we have our presentation tonight. Good evening. A little too close.
As it should.
Good evening, Council, Madam Mayor. I'm Amanda Carey, Finance Director for City of Independence. Tonight I'm joined by Cyrus Ward, Senior Manager and CPA of Aldrich CPA and Advisors, who prepared our financial audit for the Urban Renewal Agency fiscal year ending June 30th, 2025. We have a presentation of the audited financial statements, which provide an overview of the financial position of our Urban Renewal Agency. During the fiscal year ending 2025, the agency received tax increment of approximately 1.1 million, which was used to fund principal and interest payments on long-term debt obligations. The agency continues to make its payments and meet those obligations. At the end of the fiscal year, the agency had total debt outstanding of $18.6 million. Per the plan that was updated, 2016, the agency's maximum indebtedness is $17,948,950. Per ORS 957 or 457, the maximum indebtedness does not include indebtedness that was incurred to refund or refinance existing debt. So excluding those bond premiums, the agency was found to be within the threshold of its maximum indebtedness. And there were no major findings in the audit for this year. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Cyrus Ward for the presentation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, councilors. Very nice to see you all. I drove over from Bend this morning. I was at the OFGA conference, the Oregon Governmental Finance Association's conference. It's needs a shorter name, would be great. It was great driving over the pass, a little snowy. There was a car flipped over on the top, not ideal for everybody, but I made it safely, which is wonderful. So I appreciate you having me here today to present the information for the URA and then a little bit later the city. So I wanted to kind of start off by going through what a financial statement audit is, as well as what a financial statement audit is not. A financial statement audit is trying to find reasonable assurance for the financial statements in the presentation in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles. So the city and the URA both follow GASB, which is the governmental entity side of the Accounting Standards Board. And those financial statements are then prepared related to the 6/30 of the fiscal year each year. So we, as auditors, come in and will do risk-based modeling to determine what types of transactions will be investigated in greater detail through extended procedures, what will be covered at basic levels, based on certain thresholds that we have for materiality calculations, and we perform compliance testing as well. So within this model, which is put out by the generally accepted auditing standards, there are specific items and thresholds that we will set meaning that there is not coverage for absolute assurance. That is not something that is possible within auditing. We would have to have 4 people on site year round to review every single document that came in the door, which would be extremely costly to any entity that needs a financial statement audit. And so the highest level of degree that we can have is reasonable assurance. And at the highest level of the actual report is called an unmodified opinion. So the audit is also not a financial statement fraud examination. We do perform certain procedures to determine material fraud so that could occur. But actually within the most recent report, I believe it's 4% of all frauds are discovered by external auditors. The vast majority are by internal teams and individuals blowing whistle and bringing it up to governing officials such as yourself. And so it is not something designed specifically for that, although we do certain procedures related to those kind of items. So for the URA specifically, we set out our engagement letter during the year to stipulate that we would perform procedures over the URA to determine the financial statements accuracy within generally accepted accounting principles. So we are to render an unmodified opinion for the URA for the 6/30/2025 fiscal year. We did have 3 different instances of non-compliance identified within the URA. 2 of them related to the budget committee notice, as well as the budget committee hearing, publishing within a public newspaper, within online website. The findings that we had were related to the second publishing in the hearing that we could not verify the specific date that they were published. So the city puts the information on their website, which is allowable under Oregon revised statutes, but there was no audit trail specific snip saying, here's the date on the screen showing the time, the date in which it was published. And so the information was provided that published was made by management, but it's something that we could not verify ourselves. And so we had a finding there I have discussed with Rob, Director Moody, and then also yourself, about making sure that that information is tracked and caught for us moving forward so that we can make sure not have that finding occur. The other finding was related to the budgetary expenditures exceeding the budget for the actual expenditures in the year within the URA materials and services. So the different appropriation categories within the budget are made and set as the threshold within those categories. And it was over by $2,466. So we also discussed that as well to move forward to make sure that supplemental budgets are had during the course of the year to make sure that no expenditures occur. We'll talk about those as well. Within the city is the number of those were also identified. We did not have any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal control identified. There was certainly some strain within internal controls just because of the turnover of staff that occurred during the year. Can make it difficult to have proper coverage and make sure that documents be signed. And so we did have some items that we discussed with management to ensure that those positions are covered, but nothing that rose to the level of a significant deficiency or material weakness. Our 5th bullet point discusses the areas designated as greater than normal risk, which I kind of discussed how we have our basic procedures that are required by auditing standards, as well as extended procedure over high risk areas. And so we reached satisfaction on our side for our purposes of performing those tests related to the URA. And we also received the full cooperation of management and staff throughout the city for the actual scope of the audit. Working on Independence is always wonderful. It's a great town. One of our audit managers always said she wanted to move here, but her husband unfortunately dragged her down to Carlsbad because he got a job on the type list. So hopefully one day she'll move. But it's always great being out here. We appreciate working with State Manager Wes, the rest of the team. It's a great organization. From there, the rest of the letter I think would be better served discussing in greater detail related to the city, as those items more stringently affect the city rather than the URA. And so that was kind of my level within the presentation of the Arts Council.
So you mentioned just the over expenditure,
Yes.
$2,000 some odd dollars.
Mhm.
Was that a line item in
Oh.
Was that in excess of a line item or the budget over?
It was a, yeah, specific line item.
Okay.
in the budget, so if you look at the different appropriation categories, it was the only one over, the remainders were all underneath.
Okay, so overall, they were still.
Yes, still in.
Okay, thank you.
Overall, there's very little activity in the urban renewal agency. What I identified those over expenditures, it was actually the payment to Aldrich for services to the URA and no payment made to the Ethics Commission. So those were just a failure to include that in the budget, so this year we will make sure that we capture those costs, so we don't have that happen again. Thank you. Question?
I was just gonna ask, this audit is something that we requested, or is this something that is mandated on us?
It is something mandated by the Secretary of the State Board.
Great, so in the beginning of this, you said that we were almost over our debt cap, but we refinanced certain things and got back under our debt cap, but you never mentioned what that refinance brought us in at, how much under the debt cap are we now?
Oh, good. We refinanced certain premiums, so according to the plan document, our debt threshold is the 17. Back up.
17.9.
Yes. Million, and our debt at the end of the year was 18.6, but with the refinancing of the bond premiums, we don't include that amount in the threshold. So with that, we are under the limit.
How far under the limit are we?
We're right, I don't have the exact number, but it's in a comfortable range. It's within 100,000 under. It's close, but it's under the range.
So 100,000 is comfortable for you?
There's also indexing for, it's as comfortable as we are. There's also other things to consider that we haven't got into the nitty gritty. There's indexing that can be done for ORS 457. That includes things like the property values within the urban renewal agency, different things that are increased throughout the year. So we don't have the exact number without going out, contacting the agencies and getting those amounts.
Amanda, when was that debt incurred?
Oh gosh.
2016?
2016.
I don't think that's relevant, we're still paying it, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely. We're still doing it. Yes.
Any further questions? Okay, do we have any further questions? So thank you for this, and we will adjourn this meeting, right? We're focusing on an item, right? Sorry. Multitasking. Right, we are ready to adjourn this meeting.
Won't do that. That's great.
Okay, ready for? Won't call for, maybe we have to do one call.
Well, we are adjourning our regular council meeting at.
Yours.
Or your
Convening, we're convening. It was just an inadvertent, you said adjourning our city council meeting and you meant convene. Right? Yes.
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 Not enough caffeine today. That's it.
Not here, not there. Agreed.
Thank you. We are convening our regular council meeting at 6:46 p.m. We're only off by a minute. Moving on. Roll call has not changed from the URA. Yeah. That's great. Skip that, and we do have regular meeting minutes to approve as well as a work session from February.
Move to approve, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion by Councilor Ford, a second by Councilor Gilbert. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Council Source. Council Dorothy. Council Water.
Here.
Council Martin Willis.
Aye.
Council Ward.
Aye.
Council Ford.
Aye. All right, thank you. I'm gonna have a copy next time I guess. All right, thank you for that. Next up, we do have visitor public comments. So we just want to remind everyone that this is an important part of our process. The council does not respond at this time. We're here to listen and consider all of you thoughtfully and do welcome your comments. To ensure we stay on track and respect everyone's timing as it comes, we kept to the designated time limit of 3 minutes. And there are no interruptions or discussion. We do have public comment tonight regarding the food trucks from Eric Chase, please. If you could state your name and address for the record. Please.
Okay. Hold on 2 seconds. Apologies.
Chase, 2015 Independence Highway. So yeah, just a little bit on the food truck thing. It's just, for us, it's disappointment. But tonight's a new second reading. For something we fought for 2 years, not really fought, but that's how long it's been happening. Most it's just frustrating it takes that long. And that we were here, we worked on this. And then we're not here the next time, then all of a sudden it flips and all of a sudden it goes the other way. So I don't know if certain people come in and, change everybody's opinion, I guess, but the ones that are changing the opinion are probably the ones that benefit the most instead of 13 other businesses. I hear comments that we won't get choices. And we're talking 7 food trucks. That's a lot of damn choices. And you take the other 12 or 13 other food places, that's 20 in just the downtown Overland. So I know you guys trying to just keep, I guess, everybody happy or the people you're closest to, I'm not sure. It's just more than anything, it's just disappointing that it flips out. And still and the fact that it takes 2 years almost to get something this simple done. Like, how can we get anything else done in this community? It's just very frustrating, that's all. So I don't know how you go vote tonight. You vote, then it's another 4th reading next time, whatever you call it. It's just frustrating for us.
Thank you. First up, we do have a quick update on mayor's reports. It's been a busy time for all of us. Just a couple things to share. We did host a pub talk a couple weeks ago that went well, and it was focused on how the city earns revenue, and so I appreciate staff being there to support that. It's kind of a new format that we've been trying out. And I do think based on the comments that we had from people, they appreciated more of that open dialogue of people being able to ask questions and just have a conversation versus it being the kind of more formal budget process. So there is another one at the end of this month talking about how all about expenses and focused on that. We had a ribbon cutting for Cabinet Works, and I was out there, several staff members were out there, counselors. They opened up an on-site medical clinic for their employees, and it's really innovative of them to do that. Not only do their employees benefit, but their employees' families benefit from that, and there's a free care for their employees there on site. They don't have to clock out, so that was really encouraging to see that, and it was great to be able to help them celebrate that as well as take a tour of the facility. I got to participate in the Read Across America, which was a lot of fun. And Chief was there also and got asked some tough questions about being able to pay for that, which I don't know how to play, which they were disappointed in. So I may have to learn if I ever go back in front of them. We also accepted an award at the Council of Governments annual awards night for the Wall That Heals, and that was really meaningful to be able to recognize all the different partners that we had, regional partners for that. Bill Wisnet was there, former Mayor McCardle was there as co-chairs to help accept that award. So that was rewarding to see everyone's hard work get rewarded for that. And I also want to call out Chief Benuelos, put him on the spot and embarrass him a little bit for his Distinguished Service Award from the Chamber. So well done and thank you for that. Very happy to see you on that award. With that, that is my update. And we have several reports to go through, so we are just going to dive right into those liaison reports. And first up is Councilor Gordon.
Thank you, Mayor. The Library Committee met on the 23rd of February And basically, what we did in that meeting was to solidify training schedules for the committee members and revising these policies that we have as a committee. And so that was the majority of the meeting, as well as just publishing what the library's doing and that sort of thing. So it was a good meeting, and our next meeting will be on the 23rd of March. That's on Monday.
Next up, Councilor Morton with the museum board.
Would you mind if I do both of mine at one time?
I have no problem with that.
Okay. Well, first of all, the museum board. And I also am the liaison to the Historic Preservation Commission. Museum board has been engaged in collaboration with the Heritage Museum Society, which is the 501c3 supportive arm for the museum, in two important ways. First, raising public awareness of the museum and fundraising on behalf of the museum. The museum open house in February and the launch of the Adopt an Artifact program was very well attended and very successful, with at least $2,000 in hand at that event of adopted artifacts, which helps for the preservation of the items that were adopted. Increased public awareness is evident in the donations that have been pledged or made by individuals in support of the museum. And so far, that totals at least 5,000 in the month of March, and I know of another 5 or 6 that are coming in. The Historic Preservation Commission, after spending several of the last meetings engaged in being educated about architectural styles and the historical development of Independence, the last meeting showcased the Historic Preservation Commission in action. The commission reviewed a request for renovation of a local historic home. It was interesting to watch the various angles and methods employed in this process, and I look forward to following the progress of the evolving remodel.
Thank you. And next up, Councilor Core with Continuum of Care.
Yeah, the Homeless Alliance is struggling with impacts due to short notice policy changes at HUD. That's causing a lot of consternation. We've had lots of special meetings to make necessary adjustments to programming. And just wanted to highlight that in April, Councilor Martin Willis will be taking over as a representative to the Continuum of Care. I thought I had been the city rep since 2020, but I've been the city rep since 2018. That's a long time. But I am working with Councilor Martin Willis to transition and bring her up to speed as quickly as possible.
Which is much appreciated.
All right, thank you for that. Councilor Roden with the Traffic Safety Commission.
We haven't had a meeting since the last time I reported, so this is very brief, that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you. And last up is Councilor Martin Willis with the Planning Commission, last but not least.
Okay, so I'm going to try to make this concise. Your planning commission, they work really hard. Their meeting they meet once a month. Their meeting was an hour and 45 minutes. I was not able to attend in person, but thank you for having our online meetings. It's great to be able to go back and review things. So this past month, they discussed park dedication. And that's not like naming a park, that's like land within developments that is dedicated to parks. So when somebody wants to develop, there are stipulations on how much of the overall land has to be dedicated to parks within that subdivision. Unfortunately, the current codes, rules are all over the map, literally. It goes anywhere from 6.25% of the overall development site to 13, something like, let's say, I think it was 30% of the southwest crossing was set aside for parks. So, Mr. Evander is going to take some of his time and try to come up with, some cohesive rules to kind of simplify that process, to look at a development. There are questions about, whether or not unbuildable properties can be included in that park. So steep slopes, stormwater areas, wetlands. So there was lengthy discussion regarding that. So there was also discussion just about the parks and what we'd like to see in them. And my takeaway as a final conclusion was that planning commission agreed that diversity within our parks is important. That every park can't have a pickleball court and a basketball court and a soccer field. And that having a variety of parks actually with different services actually serves our community best. Mr. Evander also brought a really wonderful video, and I think if you have time to go back and watch even just the beginning of the meeting where that video is, it was really interesting. It's a historic video. I don't recall the park planner's name.
It's Frederick Lownstead, the guy who designed Central Park, and so it's about the city of Buffalo are the best planned city, so, yeah.
And just sort of their thoughts on parks and how those parks should interact with the community and what they do to serve the community. So really cool video, I highly recommend, and it's like first thing up at the meeting, which was wonderful. I look forward to hearing the language that Mr. Evander develops for the planning commission's consideration.
Thank you very much.
And I'm sure I missed a ton of stuff. There was a lot of talk going on.
Very interesting.
All right, thank you. Next up, we have City Manager West's report.
Thank you, Mayor. So council, the last few months I have skipped my city manager report because we've been so busy. But I've come to the conclusion that we're just going to be busy. This is our new normal. We've got a lot going on. And if I keep skipping my city manager report, then you'll never learn anything from me. So, well, except for on Fridays. So I have a few things that have been collecting over the last couple of months. Now, first, as you all know, we're moving to digital media meeting packets. We're doing that a number of reasons. It saves money, and it's not just the council, it's also the planning commission and HPC. It saves staff time. We have reduced staff over time as we have been in a fiscally constrained environment. And so staff have taken over more responsibilities. So saving time in one area allows them to do the other responsibilities that they have. And it resolves confusion over which documents are part of the agenda, because as you know, our agenda is a living document. And so changes happen. You received the audit today, as opposed to Thursday. So it's a continually changing document. What I want to let you know is we do have an exception option. If you truly need an exception, we absolutely understand. We can make that happen. But before you request an exception, think about a couple of things. This agenda packet, printing one, just the cost of the paper, the toner, the copier pages, it's about $100 per agenda packet. And that doesn't include the cost of the staff or the staff time to make it. So if we extrapolate that, just one packet, one every month, for a year, it's $1,200 a year. Now, let's just extrapolate even further. If we include the planning commission and HPC, that's 20 packets a month, or $2,000 a month, or $24,000 a year. Not all packets are the same size. So even if we reduce it down a quarter of the size, we're still at $25 a packet, $500 a month, $6,000 per year. How many library books can we buy with that? Right? So, and remember, That doesn't include staff time, staff costs, or the postage when we have to mail it. So if you need an exception, absolutely ask for it. We'll make it happen. But keep that in mind, right? If you don't really need one, you can get by. It does save money and we can use it to buy books for the library.
City manager voice, I think we are one of the last communities that are actually still providing printed packets. I mean, I checked around with several other communities and they have stopped this practice.
You are correct.
Long books.
Yeah.
Moving to a digital age, I guess.
Right, over a decade ago, well, okay, maybe a decade and a half now, when I was with the city of Salem, they were switching over to digital at that time. So, yeah. Again, exceptions, but just so you know what the exception does cost. Now, as we are working towards efficiencies and effectiveness, we have a process that is very unique to the City of Independence, and it's called the council bill process. And it is a confusing process for many people, including our community members. So, in talking with other cities and our contract attorneys, I really haven't found another city that does this. It's not required by code. It's just a process to make tracking of our ordinances easier for staff. And although it works, the numbering does cause confusion, and we've seen that confusion, and we heard it from our community. So Myra and I worked and we found an easier way to track the ordinance numbers, so we don't have to have council bills. So beginning in April, you will not see council bill number blah, 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 blah. But rather, any matter that would have had a council bill will actually have the ordinance number assigned. It will be very easy. Now, give us a little grace, there may be a bubble or two as we move forward, but in the end, this will be an easier process for staff and importantly for our community to understand how we do things and to track the ordinances. The other procedural item that kind of came up last time, and so I kind of took a dive into it, is the no vote when a counselor is absent. Now, historically, the city's charter was interpreted as requiring that when a counselor was absent, their vote must be considered a no vote. That's been going on for decades. Well, when that situation came up last month, I kind of took a dive into our charter. And after looking at it, I realized that that may not be the actual interpretation. So, what it actually says in the city's charter at chapter 4, section 19 is members absent, abstaining, or council positions vacant may be considered negative votes for the purpose of invoking the tie vote clause enabling the mayor to vote. So first, may. The council can choose to invoke it. Not must, may. Second, it's narrowly construed to be for a certain purpose, to invoke the tie vote to allow the mayor to vote. So once I took a look at the difference in the language, I sent it off to our contract attorney and I'm like, what do you think? She agrees, her analysis is exactly the same. So going forward, what will happen is it will just be an absentee vote. There will be no vote unless there happen to be only 4 people here and you're 2 and 2. Then the council may invoke this so the mayor can vote and break the tie. That is how the interpretation is according to our council. So I think that it didn't cause any misvotes. All it did is make things slower. And so what this will do is it will help us speed things forward. And also we'll be following the charter perfectly. So no harm, no foul, we're just being more efficient and more effective. Now, one of the things I wanted to bring to you, and if you have questions, y'all just let me know. One of the things I wanted to bring to you in January, but we just didn't have time, is our communications analytics report. Emmanuel does this every year, and it's pretty cool. The 2025 communication analytics ran from January 1 to December 29, 2025. The total digital impressions that we received were more than 3.8 million. Our social media visibility, 3.63 million post impressions. across city social media channels. And get this, that's an increase of 1,500%,
6 million?
3.6 million. Yeah, our followers increased by 8.4%, and our video views increased by 87.7%.
There's a surprising number of people that watch those videos.
Yes, it's pretty incredible. Our website, and so that's just social media. Our website engagement, 242,000 page views. Our YouTube engagement, 180,797 video views. Our email newsletter engagement, we sent out a little over 65,000 emails, and we had a 62% open rate. That's incredible. It's incredible. So what that kind of reflects, these metrics reflect, is how our residents are increasingly relying on city digital platforms to access information about our services, our events, and your decisions. We hear this, we don't just see this, I mean, this is data, right? This is straight up data. We also hear it at the COG Awards. I was there with Mayor Kate along with a number of people, and I was approached by many people, from city managers to county commissioners, who came to me and made a point of complimenting us on our 60-second council recap. They love it. We had a counselor talk to one of our staff members at a different event and say, we really need to have this in our city. And they all said the same or similar things. It's innovative. We love that we can hear what the council's doing without watching a 2-hour meeting, right? And it's that mirrors what I hear from the community. They see my face. So when I'm out and about and I'm at meetings, they say, oh, you're the 60-second lady. We like that, right? It's really interesting, and it is innovative.
Could you include those numbers in our Friday report?
Absolutely. I will happily do that. And so that leads me to that we have an extraordinary communications director, and he has strategically created a communications program that provides high quality, timely information to our community in a form that's working for our community. And the data doesn't lie, right? I mean, this is incredible. So with that said, this year, 2026, we're going to continue to focus on an emphasis on event promotion and recap storytelling. We're going to expand the use of short form videos to explain city initiatives. We're going to increase coordination between our departments to highlight services and projects, because the data doesn't lie. This is what our community is looking for. We're pretty excited about it. That's all I have.
Next up, we have our city audit now.
Like data tonight.
Dual responsibility.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here, we can skip the introduction. You're good. But yeah, so for the presentation for the city's financial statements, quite a bit larger than the URA, as you'll know, close to 200 pages across the many different funds within the city. And so the financial statements that we present here and perform our procedures over include a number of different opinion units. So within governmental financial statements and auditing, you have the government-wide financial statements, which would be the governmental and then the business type activities. You have the fund statements, and then you have budget and actual statements as well. So 3 different versions of the same information, just at different bases of accounting. And so within our opinion that we render it over the governmental business type. Each major fund, which there's a calculation that goes in for auditing standards to determine the specific major funds of a city or a municipality. And then the aggregate remaining, which is all the other funds aggregated together as one opinion unit. So kind of a very high level aspect of the financial statements opinion in itself. But for the city, we also rendered a unmodified opinion for the year ended June 30, 2025. For the tests of compliance with known standards of audits Oregon Municipal Corporations, we did have 6 different compliance findings. So I will go through those. The first one being LB1 summary information, so what is presented between the budget hearing, our budget committee meeting and the budget hearing, compared to the budget detail was off $12,898. It's a very large document, so discrepancies can occur, and we have discussed ways to go through and ensure that the information does indeed tie directly to the information a little more stringently. There are cities and counties across Oregon that have a very similar finding in that regard, as budgets continue to grow in complexity each year and new funds come online. The second finding is related to budgetary changes after the public hearing being greater than $5,000 or 10%. So for the Parks Capital Reserve Fund, there was a change of $286,260, and the Tourism and Events Fund was $306,064 difference between the budget hearing and what ultimately came from the budget appropriations on the final budget, which was adopted by the council. The third finding is related to the actual previous year's information. So within the budget, you have the second preceding year, first preceding year, the current year, which is the year under audit. And then you also have the future facing years, proposed budget, the approved budget, and then ultimately the adopted budget. So the 2 actual previous year's information needs to tie directly to the audited financial statements for those 2 periods. The 2024 year within the general fund was off $60 in actual resources and $61 in actual requirements. Not the largest amount in the entire world, but a finding nonetheless to be disclosed within the financial statements themselves. The fourth and fifth findings are ones that we discussed for the URA. The same circumstance related to the second budget hearing meeting being something that we could verify directly to the underlying documentation and the budget hearing document as well for the notice. So a repeat finding related to the URA, which also had that on that end. And then similarly for the final finding being over expenditures within those categories. Councilor Martinez, the same kind of thing occurred where overall those funds were under their allowable expenditure thresholds, but within specific appropriation categories, there were some that went over. Specifically within the general fund, we will see later on in the packet when we go through the general fund's actual and budget information. There were 4 different categories that were off, the largest one being $2,876 greater than the budget. IT service equipment fund, materials and services was over by $4,182. The URA we already talked about, $2,466 in materials and services. The facilities, vehicles, and equipment replacement fund, personnel services was over by $1,173. Then the water and the sewer fund were both over for debt service payments. An additional $9,600 was made towards debt service payment for the water fund and $114,981 for the sewer fund. So over expenditures, we have discussed the pathing forward to ensure that supplemental budgets come before council as those expenditures are expected to be made so that there are no additional findings moving forward. Fingers crossed. Similarly, we did not discover any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal control in the city. The audit areas designated as greater than normal risk were addressed and resolved to our satisfaction. And we also received the full cooperation of management and staff for the city, just as we did within the URA's audit itself. So very similar information to what we just covered. So now the differences being going through the actual communication letter with the mayor and city council. So our communication for our engagement letter was July 22nd, 2025, and we have met the satisfactory procedures as described therein. And so I discussed how we have the governmental activities, business type activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining information for the city being what was actually applied for audit procedures and getting comfortability over that information in reasonable assurance for an unmodified opinion. As we discussed, absolute assurance is not possible within auditing procedures. Some very important items to highlight are within the significant audit matters. There were 2 new financial statement standards that came online during the year. The first one is the larger one that does directly impact the city more aggressively, being GASB 101 or compensated absences. So the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, GASB, goes through and identifies specific items every several years. It becomes more and more regular as time goes on, more and more pronouncements come out. And they identify items that they would like to see increased for the visibility within financial statements. So the newest one, GASB 101, for compensated absences, the main change that occurred there was identifying not just vacation time, specific payouts that can occur for individual for earned time off as a liability for cities, but also now sick time, bereavement leave, other estimations of or paid leave. A variety of different items need to be estimated as liability to go on the books of the governmental entities. So there was a calculation performed, it needed to be performed retrospectively, so they had to restate beginning year balances. So on any of the fund information that you see restatement related, the majority of that is related to GASB 101, as we had to calculate for, well, the city had to calculate for the 6/30/2024 items that were likely to be had for that sick time, as well as 6/30/2025, and then it had to be reported.
Mayor, can I ask a question? Bereavement leave, you're supposed to be able to know what's gonna happen? And does that include also reserve and guard drill times?
There's a variety of different leaves that are described within GASB 101 that go into the calculation, and unfortunately, it's hard to nail down exactly as a lot of these are as estimations. So actually the next section I was going to go over, once we talk about 102, discusses estimates within the financial statements, and we highlight that very specifically because it's very hard to estimate who's going to be sick next year in July, kind of thing. But it is unfortunately what this standard is wanting to have done, and so estimations were done based on historic information. Past 3 years is generally what we're advising clients to go through and perform, to then see what they expect to have happen in the future. And then ultimately that would sort of throw the adjustment to be made. GASB 102 was the other standard which was adopted during the year by the city for certain risk disclosures. This one has not affected entities as much as GASB 101. It is a standard that tries to identify significant changes in future periods that may occur. So specifically restrictions within an organization. So the example used by a lot of different entities is related to property tax revenue. So there's restrictions for standard measure 5 and 50 related to the increases of property tax revenue. Those do not count as the specific disclosure because it's for a future period. That is something that's already in place. But if the city were to elect specifically, if Brooklyn County made the argument that you only want to be increasing 2%, you never want to go above that, then that in theory would be a restriction placed by a governing board that would ultimately affect the financial information and would be disclosed for that future period. So trying to give users of the financial statements sight into what things are coming down the road. So there hasn't really been too many things that have affected different entities so far. Another example would be, you're fully aware that a kind of related property tax revenue is a major industry within city limits were shut down, and knew that was going to be occurring in the future. That was going to drop property tax revenue to the city $500,000. That was going to be something that might need to be disclosed. So hasn't really been something that has required much disclosure within most organizations, and hopefully it's not something that would affect the city moving forward. And then from there we get into the significant estimates. A lot of this information we touched on in the prior year as well, because a lot of those estimates are consistent. The main ones related to PERS, the Oregon Public Employees Retirement System. There are a number of different estimates that go in there that the actuaries perform. Luckily, for anyone who participates in PERS, the state of Oregon contracts with a specific actuary who does the calculation. It is very frustrating to do that on your own and try to hire a specific firm to do that. So very nice that PERS takes care of that. And the same thing with other post-employment benefit assets and liabilities as well. A number of different estimates to go in determining the average life expectancy of individuals and the payout that they'll be receiving over the course of their life, things of that nature. There's also depreciation expense. The useful life of different assets that the city has is an estimate. You hope that police cars are gonna be lasting 7 years, 5 years, whatever the specific life is, but that doesn't always occur. Sometimes it lasts longer, sometimes shorter. So there's an estimate in there as well. Doubtful accounts related to receivables. It's always hopeful that everyone will make every payment on time and there would be no need to write off everything, but there are occasionally entities or items that need to be written off specifically. So if there's an estimate there, sometimes the payments come through that have been written off, which is always wonderful. And then finally, the estimates related to compensated absences as well. So those are the main different estimates that are significant to the financial statements and something to remember as you're looking through review information. There's also specific disclosures that are a little more sensitive, cash being one of them, called out specifically. So there's a footnote, note number 2, that discusses cash and cash equivalents we highlight, as well as PERS and other post-employment benefit notes 12 and 14, as specific footnotes which are sensitive to users of financial statements, especially the note 12 for PERS. PERS is a very large cost burden for many different municipalities moving forward. And so keeping an eye on that and making the payments necessary is going to be key. From there, the following information is very boilerplate information for required disclosure, so I'll quickly kind of move through that. We didn't have any difficulties with management during the audit. We have some corrected misstatements that I will be going over in a little bit as well. We didn't have any significant disagreements with management. Management represented on February 25th, 2026. It's my birthday. Very exciting to issue the financial statements on my birthday. And so they represented that to us. And there's both representations are at the back of the packet for the city and the URA. We did not have to consult with any outside independent contractors. We discussed the findings that we had related to the minimum standards as well. And then finally, the other matters paragraph discusses within these financial statements, there's certain information where we have an in relation to opinion, where we provide or perform certain procedures over those areas, but certain information we do not express a direct opinion on. We have the opinions on the items that I laid out, but there are certain other items within here, the financial statements themselves, which may not have a direct opinion related to them, namely the management discussion and analysis at the beginning. We look through the information, make sure that numbers make sense, kind of agree to the different items that we're seeing, but we don't perform audit procedures over those. So that brings us to the journal entries recorded. There was a couple of key ones that I wanted to hit on. If you've looked through the packet, you'll know that there were a number of them that occurred during the year. And so I wanted to make sure we highlighted some of the key ones. Journal entry number 1 was related to GASB 101 implementation. So that's compensated absences. You'll see the different funds which it affects and recording those items. And so that is kind of wrapped up all within that, which we just discussed. But number 2 is the real fun one to talk about. It is 2 pages long. And so it is a big scary number at $46 million, but I want to make sure it is completely understood. This is in relation to the city making the decision to have Aldrich draft the financial statements on behalf of the city. Similar to what City Manager West was discussing related to the costs related to the actual pamphlets being created. I was discussing at the OFGA conference yesterday actually with another county who has opted to have their financial statement auditors do the drafting as well, because they determined that they were spending about $35,000 a year within the time expense for the individual's training for the drafting of their financial statements in-house, versus they were able to go to their audit firm and get it done for about a third the cost. So decided to opt that direction. As GASB continues to put out standards, it's creating a lot of difficulty for the reconciliation and drafting of the financial statements themselves. It's a 200-ish page document a lot of the time, which has 3 different, often, bases of accounting that occur. And so a lot of different organizations are opting to have CPAs be the ones who are performing that, who specialize within government financial statements. Now, ultimately, it's still important that management have the understanding of the financial information, so we go through that and make sure they understand how these financial statements are laid out and the journal entries that we're recording to get through the different bases of accounting. And the information is ultimately all prepared by management for that. But what was done in journal entry 2 is any of the information that was recorded for the different fund and government-wide financial statement information that is being tracked by Finance Director Moody was wiped out. So we wiped it out and ultimately put it into our own Aldrich accounts that we draft, because we use the consistency across the different entities that we draft financial statements for. So it's not like the $46 million went somewhere. It was the previous 6/30/2024 balances that were removed, and ultimately 6/30/2025 balances will go back on in accordance to the information that you'll find in your financial statements. So I figured with it being $46 million, it was good to make sure we hit very, very particularly on that.
Can I ask a question? City manager, will any of the changes that are being made here, and perhaps you also, will that materially affect our budget process?
No,
Go ahead, not really.
no, that won't affect the budget process. This is just,
Just the way it's reported?
it's just the way it's reported in the financial
Okay,
statement.
thank
We
you.
will still budget the same.
That's a great question. From there, we have a number of different journal entries for items that we uncovered throughout our audit procedures, making slight adjustments. And so I'm more than happy to take questions on the related items or as well for Finance Director Curry as well. One of the big ones being journal entry number 6, we performed what's called a search for unrecorded liabilities, look at subsequent payments made during the year towards year end to make sure that things are captured in the right period. And identified one payable to a contractor that was included in the year, which should have been excluded, and one that was excluded in the year, which should have been included. So this was on those. And you'll see that as from journal entry number 6. So ultimately, they are items that were tracked within the fund, and it was just the period in which they were recorded were not properly stated. So we made a journal entry to adjust that. Journal entry 7 was to reduce the loan receivable related to the MyNet debt loan, or the actual MyNet debt loan itself for the payment that was made of $545,000. So a lot of these items as well, without getting too technical into the presentation of financial statements, they might be recorded as the cash coming in offset to a revenue, but the balance sheet account would not have necessarily been adjusted. So we make a journal entry to make that adjustment properly. It's not as if there was cash that was not reported properly. It's with the balance sheet accounts as part of the financial statement drafting moving forward, items that we will either be adjusting at year end or Finance Secretary will be adjusting during the year. Our plan is to meet in May to discuss the plan moving forward on what would be the best course of action. A number of different journal entries from there as well. Same thing with the loans receivable for the SDC loans. There's schedules that are tracked. Payments were being made in accordance with those schedules, but it's just recording for the assets on the balance sheet themselves for liabilities, adjusting those to their true value at year end. And then journal entries 13 onward are what we call PDC, provided by client journal entries. So when we came out for the scheduled timing of the actual financial statement audit, there was a number of items that were still being closed out for the city. Discussing with Finance Director Moody and the fact that the previous city accounting manager was no longer at the city, bringing on Finance Director Carey to go through and train replacement while trying to close the fiscal year and prepare for the audit. I would not have wanted to be in that position. And so there was a number of items that came in more slowly, which resulted in the audit process taking a little bit longer to close out than we would have liked. And so those entries you will see recorded here as well. It goes 13 all the way till the end, if I remember correctly, related to those items. So we do perform procedures over those adjustments to ensure that any adjustments that are made post us receiving the trial balance as of this date, and then any adjustments made by management up until our issuance are items that are materially correct and within our reasonable assurance threshold that we see. And so those are items that we did look at with scrutiny as well. but not adjustments that we identified that need to be. That covers the journal entries. Then I'll go through the summary information. The 200 page document is a bit much sometimes to read, and so we try to summarize into 3 pages, 3 of the main areas. So statement of net position, government-wide level, the statement of activity, which is essentially balance sheet, income statement in commercial language, and then the general fund budget and actual, because that is one of the hot topic items across every municipality I've been to the past several years. So the chart analysis for the statement of net position, see the different changes that have occurred, and I provided some summary information below related to those. So I wanted to just highlight specifically capital assets increasing $2.6 million, primarily related to streets and park system development, and then business type activities as well, being your water and your sewer, having increases in their system development as well, offset to depreciation expense for us accountants who love talking about that. And then liabilities decreased about $1 million. There are payments of $2 million-ish related to certain long-term debt payments, but then there's also not always, but generally increase related to the PERS liability as well. PERS liability and OPEB liability is something that the city does not have ability to control over. It is a actuarial evaluation performed based on the financial position of the economy, as well as any retired individuals who might have and active employees. The statement of activities, there was a overall fiscal position increase of $7.1 million. You'll see that expenses from 6/30/2025 to 6/30/2024 were down $850-ish thousand within the general or within the statement of activities, so the overall financial position. My understanding is a number of cost saving measures to work on reduction of certain expenditures. And then overall revenues increased about 22%, the largest being a pass-through payment from Oregon Department of Transportation for Marion County that came in. So we were able to track the $2 million that the state of Oregon said that they sent over to the city, which is ultimately going to go for, my understanding, the bridge project, right? That's correct. And then the general fund. So the main item I want to make sure to touch on is we discussed the over expenditures within those specific categories of finance, janitorial, economic development, and museum. You'll see those reflected in the variance column there, but overall the total expenditures of the general fund came in roughly $1 million under the budgeted appropriation for that fund. Overall, the total revenues decreased by $73-ish thousand. And so the total position increased about $1 million related to the or from budget to actual, the overall net position of the general fund itself decreased about $3,000, but comparatively to the budget increased by $1 million. Not to be confusing, sorry if that was wording confused anybody. And then following that, there are the manager representation letters for the city and the URA. So they both substantially say very similar information that management provided. Every document that we requested, they present that the financial information they gave to us is accurate to their best knowledge. There's a variety of different representations that are made that is reviewed and signed as well by St. Victor West. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to field some.
I have a question on you. First of all, thank you for going through that point by point. I don't believe our previous audit firm did that, so it's very helpful. I'm gonna pose this question to City Manager West and Finance Director Carey, because I don't think it's appropriate for me to obligate the city to spend money on the audit firm answering this question. You've been our audit firm now, I believe 3 finance directors. And I don't expect an answer tonight. Do you have a sense of whether things have gotten better? And that could be in any kind of metric, whether it's more or less compliance findings, more or less issues with supplemental budgets, or notice of meetings and whatnot, whatever, metric you think makes most sense. But I just want to get a sense, since we see these things kind of in a vacuum. We see them independently, and I can't tell you what last year's audit report said, I can't tell you what the one before that said, you know, many years from then. So we just see it, and we get a picture of where we are in time, is what we get, and I kind of like to get a sense of how things have been going since Aldridge took over. I get a sense that from an informational perspective, it's much better, because I, like I said, I really appreciate you going through that point by point. I've seen auditors before say, you've read the report, do you have any questions? You know, and that's not very helpful to anybody, but I pose that to you as my third here.
Well, I would say that they do an extraordinarily good job. And they find a lot of things that other auditors may not find. So we're lucky to have them. And some of the findings you see are because we do have better auditors. This is my opinion, and Amanda may have a different opinion, but this is my opinion. And so they find things. As far as the city itself, I don't think we're doing any worse. I think we're doing a lot better as far as transparency, making it easier to read. We have had a couple of years of significant turnover, and I think Cyrus noted that. And a lot of, again, this is my opinion, and I'm gonna lean on Cyrus to tell me if I'm wrong. A lot of the dings come from the fact that we were in transition for multiple years, actually. And Director Moody was trying to, we were down to, I think Myra was the only one in finance at one point in time, other than Director Moody. And that needs to be at least a 3 or 4 position department. That causes some of these dings. You can't catch everything, right? And so it's that transition time when we didn't have anybody, or as Cyrus had said, when we didn't have the accounting, when the accounting manager left, that was a huge spot and no one could fill it, right? And so I think we're doing that fine. We just had a couple of years of transition that caused the dings. There are no significant issues. We're not seeing bleeding other than the normal bleeding. And they're catching things that need to be caught. And, they're holding us to a very high standard, which I expect. And for Amanda, I expect her to live up to those standards. And I think that they will get better now that we have a fully staffed finance department for the first time since I've been here, really. That's my opinion. Please feel free.
I would just add, I would reiterate everything that City Manager West said. I've observed the same. In my review of previous audits, preparing for this year, trying to get up to speed, and it was very helpful. I had the opportunity, as former Director Moody was trying to get that audit completed before his retirement. I had the opportunity to just be reviewing all the information, trying to get up to speed on the state of the city, the numbers, the accounting structure, the budget. And we have made great strides in improving the findings. I found previous years there were a much greater number, it's similar issues, but greater number and larger amounts. So I know he was taking a lot of steps to be on top of and improve those findings. I do believe that we are prepared this year to be in a much better position to complete the audit. There's no reason it can't be done on time. I already have staff preparing, working on spreadsheets and doing things to be ready, so we're not scrambling at the end of the fiscal year to start pulling that information together. And I think that will make a big difference as we move. It helps us as we move into budget season, and it helps as we prepare for the next audit.
I'm sure every finance director has their own idiosyncrasies and how they manage stuff, so
Yes.
you need to stay in place for a while.
Yes.
That wasn't being in place for a while. As a citizen observer in this position here for a number of years, I have been through the tenure of 6 different finance officers. And I would definitely agree with things are improving and improving dramatically in the last couple of years with a highlight on transparency.
I wanted to chime in and say, it's not everyone who appreciates that their auditors are so thorough. It's very nice to hear that you appreciate that. It's something we strive to do very aggressively. But I was actually discussing with Jessica Luther Haynes, who's the senior manager who oversees all of our governmental niche, and we had a call with Finance Director Carey discussing, what's the best steps forward, is what kind of meeting can we do in the future to kind of get ahead of different findings, make sure that we're coming into the end of the year ready to go. And we hung up from that, and she said it's very nice that she wants to be very proactive on things, so I very much appreciate that and looking forward to it.
Any further questions?
I have one first. So my packet says out of 407, the packet on the screen says 551. Is that because the audit report was not included in my packet, or is what is the?
Mara sent out an email, did you not get it, Counselor?
Was the eager, so the audit information wasn't available to any counselors until today, because it was not submitted in online until today. I mean, I got that information, I'm just wondering if that's why my packets.
Yep, that's correct. It's one of the
Is it
reasons we
normal?
moved to digital, is it's easier to keep people
Is it
updated.
normal that the audit information that counselors should receive is the day of the presentation?
It was unavoidably missed, and so it was included the day of. And you're not required to receive it, you're just allowed to receive it. So let's just clarify that a little bit.
That's
It's,
important to receive it, I don't know why you call them before that.
well, we don't, but many cities actually, they don't have a presentation, they just run the audit and off it goes. But we do it out of transparency, and we like to have Cyrus here, keep us on our toes. So it was just missed in this 500+ page packet. Unfortunately, it happens.
I've just been volunteering for almost 20 years now in the last 2 packets. And so they've never been wrong. So. Thank you.
All right, any further questions? Well, thank you very much for the presentation. We do appreciate it. Or, Councilor Source, you didn't?
Oh, I was saying that.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate it. Thank you for coming back from Bent, and I know this is not the most exciting topic, but we do appreciate that to be kept apprised of them, and very happy that we have our team here, happy that we have some stability in our team. So yes, looking forward to that.
Thank you, appreciate it.
All right, we are moving on to some unfinished business tonight. First up is the second reading of Council Bill 202605, an ordinance amending the standards for mobile vending units in the Independence Municipal Code and Development Code, and Mr. Evander, that is for you.
Yes, so in front of you is the second reading of Council Bill 2026-05. It's further changes to the mobile vending code. You will remember these have been before you a number of times. You folks considered it in a public hearing on November 25th. 2025, you had a continuation of that public hearing on January 13th, 2026, and you folks read a first version of the attached ordinance at the meeting of February 10th, 2026. This is in front of you for a second reading. You folks can make a motion to approve that second reading and move to a third reading, or you can do whatever you would like. So are there any questions of me?
No, but I would like to make a motion that we approve Council Bill 2026-02 with the following amendment, that we cap the number of food trucks at 7 food trucks, or mobile vending food trucks, however you want the terminology to be in our downtown overlay to, and that would be my motion, and I'm asking for this motion so that we can follow through the commitment we made in previous meetings to multiple businesses that came and spoke to us, instead of proceeding with a second motion to one that doesn't fulfill our commitment to our downtown restaurants and business.
I think just a quick clarification, I believe that should be Council Bill 2026-05.
Is that not what I said?
No.
Said -2?
Dash
I'm
two.
sorry, thank you for the.
Yeah, clarification for the record, so we have a motion, do we have a second?
You do a motion when there's already a motion.
I don't think there was a motion, I think that's the first motion.
So, Council Roman has proposed a motion, do we have a second?
May Counselor, can we please have Counselor Roden restate her motion in completely for the record?
I would like to make a motion to approve Council Bill 2026-05 with the following amendment, that we cap our mobile vending trucks at 7 units in the downtown overlay.
Do we have a second? All right, hearing none, motion fails.
So I would, if I may make a motion, to approve Council Bill 2026-05, an ordinance amending the standards for mobile vending units in the Independence Municipal Code and Development Code.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilor Martin Willis and a second by Councilor Core. Further discussion.
Yeah, I'm pretty disappointed that we are not trying to protect our brick and mortar businesses and having a well balanced, equitable business presentation downtown for our businesses. We had multiple businesses come forward and say that if we have a unlimited expansion of the mobile food carts, that it's going to hurt our brick and mortar buildings. And we came to a compromise with the people that came and talked to us, and in the very next meeting, when they're not here, we change our minds and turn our backs on these people. We should be ashamed going forward.
And if you guys are informed to know that we heard from other businesses in the meeting that you were not present,
One other business.
multiple other businesses. And, I received a couple of emails from additional businesses and additional constituents who were livid that we would choose to limit competition on downtown corridor amongst businesses and big firms. So I want to make sure that's reflected, right? That we heard that discussion. There's numerous discussions in the community. There's even clarification from the folks over at Parallel Court, because to be honest, I was a little confused by their presentation at the first meeting. There's clarification. They addressed their concerns about aluminum, so just make sure that that's reflected.
Councilor Ballard?
I'd just like to say that, I appreciate the process that we have where we have multiple readings, because the first time that I heard that, I didn't. I made the decision to vote, and I did it reluctantly because I support having the ordinance and enforcing standards, but I didn't think that there was a really good reason to pick a specific number at that point. It seemed arbitrary. And I kind of struggled with that. And I was comforted to know that there would be a second reading so that we could talk to members of the community, which I did. And there was one business that came forward, not several. But also hearing from the Parallel 45 gentleman, I didn't understand too that we kind of had a commitment with him for up to 5 vendors. So the whole thing just seemed arbitrary, but just a number on it. And I do support having the community choose where they want to eat and not me. So that's where I put it.
Further, Councilor?
Yes. In spending time thinking about this ordinance and to put a number on it or to not put a number on it, and the research that was done that was helpful to making an ultimate decision in my thought, I put more weight to the fact that any proposed food truck would be have to pass certain standards of cleanliness and customer safety, and that also it leaned on the business that was going to support them to also give them the opportunities to pass a city inspection. And I think that is more important. That's the more important part of this ordinance, more so than a particular number, is knowing that there will be enforcement in place.
I essentially got the same comment as Councilor.
Thank you. Councilor Martin Willis?
I don't want to say no to local business. And when someone has the spirit of entrepreneurship and has come up with a business plan and a food truck is part of that, and a property owner is willing to make a structural investment in our community to facilitate that, I don't want to deny them the opportunity to set up and grow their business and like New York Squares Pizza to potentially or not become a brick and mortar business in our community. I appreciate variety when I choose not to cook at home. And I think that food trucks give us more options and options that quite frankly, I can't find in our local brick and mortar business. So I'm clearly in favor of the ordinance as it is now.
Other questions or discussion? Okay, thank you. We do roll call, Mara.
Counselor Four.
Aye.
Counselor One.
Did we make a motion? We did make a motion.
Yes.
Yeah,
I-
I- Aye.
Aye.
Counselor Martin Willis.
Aye.
Counselor Water.
Aye.
Counselor Root.
Oppose.
Counselor Source.
The motion passes. Next, item 6.2, we have a second reading.
Excuse me, you need a,
Yeah. Oh,
you need
sorry.
a third reading of this.
Thank you.
Page 159 has a potential motion. Myra,
Give a motion for this.
I move to adopt the proposed ordinance Council Bill 2026 05.
Second.
What page is that on?
I'm sorry, it's 159 of the 551 page packet that's online.
On the screen now.
Don't the second one instead of the third one.
No, they already did a first reading.
Okay.
We did our first reading at our last meeting prior
Oh,
to
yeah,
the
yeah,
work
yeah,
session.
sorry,
Yeah.
Yep. One happy.
And I opened that can of worms.
Let's find out on daylight savings time.
Yeah, that's it.
All right, we do have a motion in a second.
Who was the second?
It was a tie.
Motion in 2 seconds.
I think Kelsey and I did it at the same time.
We'll give the second to Councilor Court.
Okay.
Sure. All right, further discussion. Hearing none, roll call please.
Counselor Source.
Aye.
Counselor Root. Oppose. Counselor Water.
Aye.
Counselor Martin Willis.
Aye.
Counselor One.
Aye.
Counselor Four.
Aye. Now we're official, right?
So the motion has passed and been assigned ordinance number 1628.
Thank you. Now we can. Okay. We are going to do the second reading for Council Bill 2026-03, and Mr. Evans, this is also you.
Yes, at your previous meeting on February 10th, we had a public hearing on an annexation request to annex 46.7 acres along South 13th Street. That property would be the designation of that property would be changed from county exclusive farm use zone to city residential, and it would be zoned city mixed density residential as part of that annexation. So this ordinance would both annex that property, assign a designation for the property, and then adopt the master plan that they submitted as part of their application packet. Again, you had a first reading of the attached ordinance at your February 10th meeting. A second reading suggested motion is on page 197 of the packet for your consideration.
I move to read the proposed ordinance, Council Bill 2026-03 for the second time by title only.
Second. Thank you. We have a motion by Councilor Core, second by Councilor Martin Willis. Any further questions? And now we'll do roll call please.
Counselor Source.
Aye.
Counselor Root. Aye. Counselor Water.
Aye.
Counselor Martin Willis.
Aye.
Counselor Morton.
Aye.
Counselor Four.
Aye.
Now we need to do the third time.
Yes, can be the.
Yeah, we're done the neighborhood, so 46, 47 acres along South 13th Street, tax lots 1100 and 100 and not 8.4.
Now we can do
Now
that.
you can do it, thank you.
I move to adopt the proposed ordinance, Council Bill number 2026-03.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilor Martin Lewis and a second by Councilor Roby. Questions? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call please.
Councilor Ford. Aye. Councilor Morton.
I,
Councilor Martin Willis.
Aye.
Councilor Waller.
Aye.
Councilor Rose. Aye. Councilor Source.
Alright,
Alright,
Yes, so it passed, and it's then assigned ordinance number 1632.
thank you very much. One last piece of unfinished business. This, Council Bill 2026-07, and again, this is Mr. Van.
Perfect, thank you very much. So this one is kind of like the others, but a little bit different. I apologize for that. So this one is for you folks held a public hearing on potential changes to fencing standards for public uses, including government facilities, water treatment plants, all that sort of stuff. At your previous, like I said, February 10th meeting, at that meeting, you folks adopted a first reading of the ordinance, but when we started looking at that exhibit B of that ordinance, we realized, oopsie doopsie, we did not include the proper language in that previous exhibit B. This would adopt the language that you folks intended to adopt, so we did correct we added the proper exhibit B as part of this. This is in front of you not as a first reading, not as a second reading, it's in front of you as a first reading. So potential motion for you to consider is on page 239 of the packet. You will see that it would be for a first reading as part of this ordinance. Any questions of me? Yes.
I have multiple questions, and the first one's gonna sound pretty silly, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. How do you measure 6 feet tall on these fences that would have barbed wire on the top? Do you measure it from average ground height, or is it the fence itself is 6 foot? Can you explain that to me? And I know that's a silly question.
It's a tough question, and it's something that I think that we're gonna need to discuss a little bit. How I would measure it is from fences are measured in lengths essentially, or heights. So if you had a panel of 6 foot tall fencing, I would assume that that's a 6 foot tall fence.
My other question is, are we changing the rules to our fencing code to fix the situation that we already have in place that we previously didn't follow the rules for?
Yes, so as part of the February 10th meeting, we had a public hearing on this. And at that public hearing, there was a pretty extensive staff report that was led by Assistant City Manager Irvine about the situation. So that for those of you who, I mean, all of us are I believe aware of the situation. The city is trying to secure its public facilities to ensure that both the facilities are protected and people are protected from some of the materials that are at the facilities. And so in doing that, city put up 6 foot tall fences with barbed wire, or it took a fence that existed that was 6 foot tall and simply put barbed wire on top. We did that for the wells along, what's that road, River Oak down there. The wells along River Oak. We just put barbed wire on top of a 6 foot tall fence. In doing that, a couple of folks complained and said, you're in violation of your zoning code. In the process, we looked and we said, oh shoot, well, our zoning code doesn't address government facilities well at all. Partially because in a residential zone, what it essentially tells us to do is have a 3.5 foot tall fence. Non-barbed wire along the front of the property. That would not secure the facility. Also, in looking at the code too, we realized we have a number of non-conforming fences writ large throughout the city, but that are inclusive of a number of public facilities, including the Monmouth Well and the airport, which have the 6 foot tall barbed wire fence around the facility. And so in looking at that, we said, well, shoot, this is a bigger issue that we need to address. We need to have fencing standards for governmental facilities, and they should probably be 6 foot tall, or else we've made the airport non-conforming. That's basically the reasoning that went into this. Assistant City Manager Irvine went into far more detail at the public hearing last time.
Third question, sorry. To be a good neighbor to people who are complaining about the fence, and maybe this should go to Gerald more than you. When I would tour the area, we have a fence that borders people's property, and I believe it's about 20 feet in. We have another fence that doesn't border the property, but it's also 6 feet tall. And then there's a gap in between for natural drainage. Why couldn't we just be good neighbors and put the barbed wire fence on the interior fence that doesn't? I mean, it's still a good border around our water treatment, or our water plant. But it's also a good neighbor practice so that we're not putting a barbed wire fence on someone's backyard. Is that? It still provides a barrier to protect our assets, and it keeps us a good neighbor with people in our community.
So to answer your question, that second fence doesn't extend all the way down and tie in to the other fence. It only goes down a short distance and stops. The other thing is that in looking at the standards for protecting public facilities, they recommend placing them at the perimeter. And if you don't put barbed wire on there, they recommend putting a secondary fence with barbed wire inside of that. Basically, it looks like a prison. So we followed the first recommendation, which is to place barbed wire around the facility on the perimeter fence.
Councilor Source?
Thanks, Mayor. I totally understand where the city, the intent of this, and totally agree that we need to target our soft pockets, potential acts of terrorism, vandalism, whatever you want. And I am a bit sympathetic to those neighbors, as Councilor Rubin indicated. We talked about this last meeting, but I just hope that in the future that we do a little more, and I totally understand, City Manager West, that your staff is not as limited, but I do think it goes a long way for community relations to engage with the neighbors. I'm happy to vote for this, support what y'all are doing, fully understand, and totally understand those neighbors kind of lucked out, for lack of a better term, that they didn't have that hardening around this property in their backyard for time before. But it does change a bit of the characteristics of their property because of where it's located. I think it's an important city. Try to do better next time. You know, that's all you do, because you're doing what you need to do, which is protecting our soft governance. So I do want to thank you for doing that, but also acknowledge that I understand why that's the feelings. So thank you.
Further questions?
Comment, but did you want to say something first?
Yeah, I've already talked to operations about any future changes to fencing. We'll be sure and let the property owners surrounding it know what we're doing, why we're doing it, and the standards behind it. So,
And that aligns with what I was going to say. I definitely believe in good communication, but I also believe there's a need to be consistent in the enforcement of law.
Other questions? Not business and action item.
Ready for a motion? I move to read the proposed ordinance Council Bill 2026-07 to adopt LA 2026-01 in full as the text is contained in the council packet for the first time.
Second.
We have a motion by Counselor Morton and a second by Counselor Martin Willis. Further question?
I have a statement. I'm gonna vote no for this, not because I don't wanna protect our assets, I do. But I think we could have done this without putting it on our neighbors to have what looks like a prison in their backyard. I think we could have adjusted the fence line so that they did not have barbed wire over their own fences. And I appreciate that the city is gonna communicate better in the future, but I still think we could be good neighbors with this situation and protect our assets.
And I guess I'll just say, for the record, that there was an extension, an extensive discussion about this at the previous meeting. If people so choose, they can go back and review that, just letting people know that there is more discussion on that topic if people choose to look into it. Further questions to comment? Do a roll call, please, Myra.
Counselor Source.
Aye.
Counselor Road. Opposed. Counselor Wellmeyer.
Aye.
Counselor Martin Willis.
Aye.
Counselor Morton.
Aye.
Counselor Ford.
Aye. So when you said we were moving forward previously, was that tonight or future meetings down the road? With the first reading, second reading, third reading?
This one, we don't have anybody absent, so we're okay. We can just run as usual. And with Councilor Proden's opposition, it passes, but it will come back to you for a second.
Alright, thank you.
Is Myra.
I'll read the title. It's an ordinance amending Independence Development Code section 74.0 specific standards for accessory uses. To establish standards for offenses associated with government facilities and declaring an effective date. They'll come back in April 1st.
Thank you. Alright, so we are moving on to item number 7, new business, first up 7.1, Q2 financials. Director Carey.
Hello again, Council Mayor. Before you, we have the Q2 financial update presented to Council. So we have the overview. This is the same information that is presented quarterly. Won't get into explanation, just a review of the information before you. So our public safety fee.
Excuse me. Could you hold the mic a little bit closer? We're missing every other word.
Absolutely. The public safety fee is it's on track, projecting to hit the estimated revenue forecast of $816,000 for fiscal year 25-26. As of December, we were at $407,398, so just about on spot with halfway through the year for revenue collection. That's looking very good. Again, that's helping to offset the costs in our general fund to support our police department. Utility rate revenues continue to track. We are collecting at a very high level. No concerns there. We did have a slight dip, as was noted in November, but that is not out of the normal range. And I'll just remind the council that the payments collected during the billing period do not necessarily reflect the bills that were sent out that same month. They are from prior periods, so it's not a direct correlation, the payments that are received versus the billing that is sent out month over month. And again, we have our debt summary. The city continues to make all scheduled principal and interest payments on outstanding debt obligations. Most obligations, the principal is paid annually, interest is paid semi-annually, and we continue to monitor that, pay that down on schedule. There have been no issues. One note, we have 4 payments only remaining on the museum building loan.
So we should have that paid off. If it doesn't sell, that will be paid off soon. And the 2017 Minnet FC obligations will be paid off in fiscal year 26-27. So we are making strides.
Yes, Dr. Source, question?
I think it would be helpful, and maybe it's just how my brain works, if we can add another row, which is what the payment is. Like an annual payment, because I see, you know. I see the principal, I see the interest, and I can do the math. But it might just be easier, so we can just see what the payment is.
See that total amount as well.
Yeah, like,
Absolutely.
let's just mine it, not just a mine it, they can make those, I think they make them semi-annually payments. Or
Yes.
annually payments. Just so people understand that, like, that might look like a big number, but they're making pretty big payments too.
Okay, absolutely. We can add an additional column and include that, so you're not having to interpret or do math. You can just easily see that number.
Thank
One other thing on that, we should also have notation when money is coming in from an outside source to pay part of these debts, so for instance, the Minnet debt.
Okay, absolutely.
Amanda, this may be my own ignorance, I apologize, the Yampa line of credit. We're not accessing it yet, but we're paying interest on it.
Yes, there was a small interest payment that was due this year. Okay, that's right. So Director Fisher just reminded me, there was a mandatory draw. We're not spending it yet, but there was a mandatory draw. And that's why we're paying interest. There was a.
That makes more sense to me
went
now,
out.
thank you.
So
How much was that mandatory draw amount? Should that be?
You can see that on page 281, Counselor. If you look at the bottom, there is a balance of 500,000. That was the mandatory draw.
That's not, see that, thank you.
Moving on to the Urban Renewal Agency interfund loans. Again, this is information you've previously received, and again, if council has any requests for changes, I'd be happy to do that. There are the several outstanding interfund loans between the Urban Renewal Projects Fund and other city funds. They are all scheduled and laid out before you tonight. We have the 2025-26 payments that are scheduled, the loan balance as of this fiscal year end, and the final maturity date.
And one question on that, do the sewer, water and storm drain funds, are those representative of interfund loans that are being paid back?
Those are prior interfund loans before the council determined that we're no longer doing interfund loans.
Do
And
you know how much of a fan of those I am?
I absolutely do, Counselor, and those are the older ones that we're still paying off. And there will be a few that will hang around for a little while.
Yes.
Yes. And then again, the Minnet receivable, this is the same information that was presented as of June 30th, 2026, so the end of the current fiscal year. The city has recorded a receivable from Minnet totaling $7,865,000 for external financial reporting in accordance with GAAP. We maintain the allowance for doubtful accounts in the same amount. This is just standard practice. It continues forward. We are receiving all payments from Minnet. All the debt service continues to be paid, and there is no issue there. As far as the finance department, it is March, and we are jumping straight from the audit into budget season. So the staff is hard at work going through financials, reviewing all the funds, and working to prep all the information to begin compiling, working with department heads and compiling the budget. That is something that leads to something we talked about in our audit presentation this evening, some of the findings we had. Those were primarily
supplemental budgets that were missed bringing forward. And that's something that we as a department, myself as the new finance director, I'm gonna be focusing heavily on, is reviewing our financials, reviewing our accounts and expenditures, and ensuring that we're not going over those budgeted amounts. So when you see our finances here as of December 31st, 2025, that's the halfway point in our fiscal year. Been doing a lot of reviewing, and we have some adjustments that are going to need to be brought forward to council. So the plan is next month for our April meeting, we are going to have a list of all of the budgets that need to be adjusted to make sure that we are compliant with local budget law. And we ensure that we, through the end of the fiscal year, will remain within our spending thresholds. So there are quite a few accounts that we're reviewing, and reviewing those expenditures, reviewing the estimated year-end numbers at this time as we're projecting ending numbers for the budget, and we'll be making those adjustments.
Any further questions? All right. Thank you for the update. Thank you. Then next up, we have some very patient people who've been waiting a long time to get to the public hearing for this CDBG grant funding. And Mr. Irvine is not here today.
Right.
So
You have a script.
I do have a script, yes.
And Marshall will be here. Marshall, do you wanna come up?
Yes, thank you all for being here. We've got some people who are. Excellent,
Yep.
okay.
Okay, so I will get going on the script. This evening, we have a public hearing on a CDBG grant project number IA 2403, project name Early Childhood Educator Certification and Business Training to obtain resident perspectives of the program and its effectiveness. For anyone wishing to speak, we're asking you to use the speaker cards that are provided. When called upon to speak, you must be recognized by the chair, and you must state your name and address for the public record. And we do have some speakers who have turned in cards. I will now open the public hearing for project number IA 2403, project name Early Childhood Educator Certification and Business Training. And it is now 8:19, and I'm opening the hearing. May we please have the staff report?
Marshall, would you like to handle that, or would you like me to handle that?
I'll fill in.
Okay, perfect. It's gonna take two of us to replace ACM Irvine, so here we go. So the background, Independence is a childcare desert. We know this, we've been working to find ways to encourage childcare in our community. We identified, I think it was Marshall and Sean actually, that identified a community development block grant as a funding source to stand up a childcare project. That CDBG required a pre-application hearing, which was held on August 4, 2024, and then a hearing once the project is completed, which is why we're here today. Now, the project it's an incredible project. We partnered with multiple agencies to apply for the CDBG to fund a childcare project to provide business training and childcare certification to people who wanted to open in-home daycare in Polk County, but particularly here in Independence. We were awarded $136,000 to implement Primero Pasos with the mission to serve at least 20 participants, at least 11 of which met the federal standard for low or moderate income. The actual project held 2 cohorts totaling 27 people who completed 12 weeks of training, 1 cohort in English and 1 cohort in Spanish, and all participants met the federal standards. So now that the project is completed and all records and reports have been submitted, the final action is this public hearing. Marshall, what did I miss?
I think that was everything. I think that the next step is just to hear from some people again who are a little bit more hands-on and can kind of speak to the real world impacts of the project is having.
So we wish to hear from everyone who is interested in this discussion. Please remember to state your name and address for the records. We do have 2 cards. And I'm sorry, I am not going to be able to pronounce the first name correctly. I want to make sure I get it correct. So I'm hoping you can come forward. Yes, please come forward and.
My name is Sochi Toranta. I am from Woodburn. Don't know how much my address you need.
We need the full, we have it on the speaker card. We're okay. Okay. Thank you.
I'm the program manager for Primeros Pasos. So Primeros Pasos is a program under Capacity Leadership Institute. And we partner with childcare resources and referral and the city of Independence to provide these cohorts to the residents in Polk County. We also, besides the amazing summary, we also provided 30 hours of business training to each individual and 20 hours of one-on-one assistance to them. They received at the end of completing the cohort a $1,000 stipend, and they received a laptop for their use. So everyone who completed, which were 15 people in the Spanish cohort and 12 people in the English cohort, total of 27 participants in total, they were able to receive all those benefits from this cohort. And the cohort took about almost, I think, 6 months per cohort, because it was a 10-week session that everyone had to complete 10 sessions to complete their classes. The one-on-ones also took a very long time for 27 people. And so childcare and resources and referral took a lot of the portion to be able to give them one-on-one assistance to every single person who participated in this cohort.
Yes, good questions. Okay. First of all, Kakuni and Kafasis does great work. Thank you for that. I just want to make sure I understand your visual here, which is great information. Thank you. So it said, it looks like 10 licenses have been awarded, but only 8 of those organizations are workforce ready. Is that correct? Am I reading that right?
So, the is.
I think there's 27 people total, so 10 are licensed ready, 8 are workforce ready, and 2 second locations where you're expanding, which is a total of 27. Is that correct?
Let me have Tiffany from Childcare and Resource and Referral explain a little bit more about the information that's provided in front of you.
And Tiffany is actually our next speaker card, so come on up and just state your name and address for the record. We're just here.
Hello, I'm Tiffany Busby. I work for Childcare Resource and Referral as our early learning supervisor. And I was one of the business coaches for the English cohort as part of this, so I was pretty deeply impacted, which is I know the numbers here. You are correct, Councilman. We do have 10 that are license ready, which means that they're in process of receiving their license or have received their license. 8 workforce ready represents those that maybe aren't in a position because of their home needs updating, but are able to either enter the workforce in childcare, meaning that they've met all the licensing standards, they've received their background checks, have done all the safety trainings. And then 3 are looking to expanding their programs, which means they're moving from a registered family to a certified family, or in some cases even looking to open a center here in Independence. And then 2 more are looking to open their second location and looking for locations for that. And that's where those numbers.
I appreciate business training because it's not just good for their customers, it's great for the businesses and helps people stay in business longer.
Absolutely. Within that, we estimate about a total of 106 slots have been impacted. And what that means is essentially for those that are currently open but expanding, that's an additional 6 slots. But we also look at the slots that they already have. Because as you mentioned, it does impact the entire program, not just the new 6 places, but the 10 that are there because of better business practices through handbooks or just general good quality childcare, which is what we're looking for. 2 of our programs also submitted their Spark binders. It's not reflected in this. Spark is the kind of Oregon standard for quality childcare. It's what regulates that. So they submitted for their star rating with the Spark as well.
Thank you for your work on this. I heard great things about the program and we're very excited to see it. So congrats on getting the cohorts through.
Very much for the opportunity.
Definitely very needed in the community. Okay, Councilor Source?
So now that you've done it once, you're interested in doing it again, is it something that you're thinking about?
Absolutely. This is actually my personal second time within not Polk. I recently, right before this, actually concluded one in Yamhill.
had a bit of a larger spending budget, so we saw a bit of a larger impact with it. But we're definitely always looking for ways to improve, and it's a constant mission of ours.
Is there a need in our community to do this?
Absolutely, yeah, Oregon remains a childcare desert, which I don't have the exact numbers right off the top of my head, but I believe it's, especially for infant toddler, it's about 1 in 15 children have access to childcare, which is a deficit of 14 children that are under the age of 2.
Thank you.
Further questions? Or I should say public testimony. Thank you again for coming in. I know that we had to get through a lot to get to this point tonight. I will now declare the record and hearing closed, and it is 8:27 p.m. Thank you. Thank you. Any further action item on that one? We are getting a request for a quick break, like a 5-minute break. Oh, yeah, all right.
All right.
5 minutes.
And a request to please.
Done. Remember,
Goodbye.
okay, we're back. Okay, I'll make sure I got my. Thank you for that, necessary break. And for your patience as well as we continue to make our way down this agenda. We are back, reconvened, and we have a public hearing for our parks system master plan adoption, and I have a script in front of me that I will read. This evening, the city council will hold a public hearing on legislative amendment number LA 20-202. It's daylight savings time. I don't know what we're gonna blame it on, but legislative amendment number LA 2026-02 to discuss an update to park system master plan. The council will make the final decision on the proposal based on the complete record, including the testimony received following tonight's public hearing. These proceedings will be recorded. This hearing will be held in accordance with the land use procedures required by the city and state of Oregon. This is a type 4 legislative procedure. At the beginning of the public hearing tonight, staff shall identify the applicable substantive criteria from the city's comprehensive plan and or state of Oregon statewide planning goals. For anyone wishing to speak, we ask that you use the speaker cards provided. When called upon to speak, you must be recognized by the chair and state your name and address for the public record. Before we begin, does any counselor wish to declare an actual or a potential conflict of interest in this matter? All right, hearing none. I will now open the public hearing for LA 2026-02 at 8:35 p.m. And may we please have the staff report?
Perfect. I'll start and then I'll hand it off to the consultants. I'm sorry.
So.
This public hearing on LA 2026-02 is for an update to the park system master plan. The last time we updated our park system master plan was in 2015. And since that time, a number of projects have gotten completed. And this is to sort of bring to update it, right? Makes sense. What the plan does is it lays out an inventory of the existing facilities, including the condition of the facilities, establishes cost estimates of the likely facilities, and establishes a prioritized list of efforts to pursue. The MATs will explain that in greater detail. What I do with regards to things like this is just make sure that it's consistent with the Oregon State planning goals, the City of Independence comprehensive plan, the planning requirements. And in short, yes, it is. It addresses a clear public need, which is one of the criteria that you folks have in relation to changes to development codes or comprehensive plans, because the previous plan is out of date. This is intended to update the plan to bring it up to 2026. And so in short, my recommendation is that you folks approve this plan as submitted. And that was also the recommendation of the Planning Commission as well, who did have a public hearing on this as well. So that's, in short, my staff report. These folks have far more detail about the plan that they're here to present.
And presenting tonight, Matt Cohn from Greenworks and Matt Hasty from May.
We also have Shannon White from Connor. Thanks, folks. Yeah, she needs some moral support. Thanks. Who's ready to talk about parks? Very exciting. Thanks for hanging in there. So today we're going to give a very rough overview. I see you had over 500 pages of things to read. We contributed to a couple hundred of those. We are not presenting all those pages today. Give me an overview of the process, the overall engagement approach, overview of how the plan played out, and what some high level recommendations are. Matt will talk more about that dedication code that was mentioned earlier, comprehensive plan recommendations, etc., and kind of go into the prioritization and the process of how we got there. So next, this is our handy visual timeline. The upper bar in red is all the points of engagement, which they were many. Engaging the Parks Board several times along the way, doing 2 open houses paired with surveys, doing additional outreach once we saw survey results, reviewed the demographics and said we were a little short on reaching the Latino community. And so the city made extra effort to reach out and go to them to get their feedback, to ensure that people are their voices are being heard for anyone who's being interested in the plan. And so those kind of highlights when we reached out to the board for orientation, checking in after every public engagement, previewing recommendations and strategies, messaging, wording on surveys, everything. They were kind of our sounding board along the way, and provided full QA/QC of the full plan report. And so the bottom are all kind of our major steps from setting the project values, which set the framework for the entire plan, of filtering everything through. Is this equitable? Is this resilient? Does this improve people's health and well-being? Is this financially responsible? And is it feasible? And so those are the things that kind of drove our site inventory, our assessments, our recommendations, and check those things throughout the process to make sure that the parks did align with those values. And so this is kind of general overview, and then we are here finally at City Council to review adoption. Next. And so this is a little more detail in the engagement approach. Again, looking at the numbers of participants from in-person attendees, everything was duplicated in full online on the website. The physical surveys were handed out with digital QR codes during the events, and those same QR codes led to the same surveys that were available online, promoted through all the means that were talked about at the beginning of the meeting, through flyers and websites and social media posts and all that stuff to make sure people were aware of this plan, what was going on. And so we use that to kind of validate and check the values, what people thought were critical amenities for everyone to have access to, and other things along the way. And then the second round was about very simple. Please rate the importance of each of these projects so that we know what's most important to the community. And then that led to the prioritization process and the ranking that you see later in the report. Next. And then just to summarize what Fred just said, we looked, when met with the Parks Board, they recommended to move the plan forward after a couple rounds of review to the Planning Commission in December. And then we came in February to Planning Commission, and they recommended to move it to you. And so then there was a clarification of some of the demographic numbers that came up as part of that Planning Commission that we responded. So this is just an overview of the table of contents, looking at previous project context, past planning efforts, related planning efforts, how they relate. This is one of many plans in the system, and so we wanted to reference things like the Southwest Independence Concept Plan, and the Central Towns Plan, and the Transportation Plan, because they're all relevant to how parks play within the role of that. And so we're very clear of like this is why this is relevant. This is the reason this information. Again, the project values that I mentioned before, and how we came up with those and the descriptions of those. The whole outreach summary, which I kind of went over, the engagement process and the results. Level of service, which with Matt and I will get to and summarize, which essentially, do you have enough parks to serve your community now and in the future? And how do we measure that? How does that relate to things like SDCs or just general communication of do people have access to what they want and need, right? And then there's a full asset inventory of all of your properties there that noted which amenities are present and which are in good condition and which need improvements, and as well as constraints that we consider throughout this process of land ownership or adjacencies or floodplain challenges or other things that we noted in each of the sites and the projects that will affect what can be built there, how long that process will take, how many hurdles you might have to jump over in order to implement that project. And then lastly, and not least, all the recommendations for all the sites, and then ranked and their prioritization with costs, stuff like that. So that's generally the overview of the plan. And now I'm gonna hand it over to Matt. Hey, thanks, Matt. Thank you all. So I'm just gonna talk about a couple of aspects of the planning process. One of the things that we were asked to do was look at land dedication requirements, not to adopt new ones, but to provide some recommendations on how you can improve what you're doing already. I'll talk about some comprehensive plan update recommendations, which are really just to incorporate this updated plan as part of your comprehensive plan. And I'll talk about a couple of changes to the policies related to parks and recreation in that document. And then I'll also talk about, as Matthew said, level of service, and then he'll say more about that. So in terms of the land dedications, this is about making sure as development occurs, that land is set aside through the development process for parks and recreation facilities. This is one of a bunch of different things that cities like Independence do to make sure that happens and make sure they have enough resources to build and maintain parks. So I'm not gonna name all the things on this slide, but that's just the point. Land dedication is sort of one thing you do, but it's one thing among many. So next one. So you already have some land dedication requirements. There's some sort of overarching goals here that we considered in coming up with some recommendations on how to improve those. One is to make sure that you are including parks and trails in previously planned areas, particularly the Southwest Independence concept plan area, that you're providing some flexibility on how you do this, and I'll talk about that in a moment. And that you're clear about when you are requiring dedication of land, that you've got some criteria and some standards for how you do that. You have some of that now, but they're, I will say, vague, and they could use some clarity and some updating. And I'll also just note the things related to land dedication requirements are recommendations. You would ultimately go through a process of updating your development code to incorporate these recommendations and refine it. So that's gonna require some process, and it's also gonna allow for some more input into that process and discussion of it. So what we've got now are really just some overarching recommendations, but we get into some details of it as well. So next one. So there's again, things you currently do. You currently require dedication just for subdivisions. So well, in terms of development of land, you require for subdivisions and also for multifamily developments, but you don't require it for other types of residential development. You have an option that's called a fee in lieu option. That's if somebody can decide, I don't want to dedicate land, I'm gonna give the city money instead. The city then pools that money and ultimately uses it to purchase land. So you have that, is at the discretion of the planning commission to allow for that. And then again, you also require a certain amount of recreational area to be set aside or provided within multifamily developments. You have some specific site conditions, but they're pretty vague. They basically say, give us some land that's generally usable, which again, we're gonna recommend that you update some of that ultimately. So next one. So here's the recommendations we've got. One, we are suggesting kind of a tiered approach to doing this. That's related to the size of the amount of acreage that would be dedicated by a given development. So for a development where the resulting dedication would be really small, like less than a quarter of an acre, that's not really enough to develop something, very usable in terms of a park or a recreation facility. So for those small facilities, small dedications, we would suggest you simply use the fee in lieu option for that. For sort of medium-sized dedications, provide some flexibility in terms of whether or not that dedicated land is dedicated to the public and managed as a public park, or is a private facility that's managed by a homeowners association and is sort of primarily for that development. But if that facility ends up being on a public street, then it would be open and accessible to the general public. And then for larger developments where you end up with at least 1.5 acres of land, those should be dedicated to the city. Those should become public parks. Those should be accessible to everybody in the community. So that's kind of what we mean by the tiered approach. And then again, we've got some requirements around making sure land is usable. We recommend those be more specific in terms of the topography of the area, the amount of the area that's constraining, a number of other criteria like that. For the requirements associated with multifamily developments, we suggest that you add some specific amenity requirements, so it's not quite so open-ended as it is now. And that you also ultimately address some things related to phasing of developments and site preparation and dealing with contaminated areas as part of these requirements, again, when you refine these and adopt. So that's kind of where we're coming from on the land dedication, but again, that would go through a more detailed refinement process down the line. Yeah.
When you talk, I didn't see that in here, could you tell me what page it is, the recommendations for land requirements?
Yeah, I cannot remember exactly what
Does
page
anybody
it
else
is in
know
the
what page it's
document. It's in one of the chapters, and there's also a separate memo. But it is, these are all kind of embedded in one of the chapters of the document.
What you talked about.
There's actually a technical memo and an addendum that goes with the master plan that discusses recommendations. He's summarizing them and the master plan summarizes them. But when they actually get ready to go through the process, when Fred takes that through the planning commission to update the development code, they'll use the technical report that was provided in the appendix and bring that forward. Because the appendix, I think, is pretty close to. It's a bunch more pages on the master plan.
This memo is pretty short. It's like about 6 or 7 pages, but it is one of the appendices. But then these are summarized body of the plan. I just don't remember what.
Yeah, the land dedication ones are actually also in the body of the report, and I think the comp plan amendments are appendix. Yeah.
That's correct.
But remember, but
And someone will find it.
It's somewhere in the sevens. I'm trying to flip to it. It's somewhere in section 7. It's either, I want to say it's section 7.5, but I can't find.
It's
the page number.
page 475 of the packet, site requirements for dedication of land, and there's actually it's starts on 474. Potential updated requirements and discussion questions.
yeah, it covered things like minimum width of the land being dedicated and percent that would be considered flat, just less than a 5% slope, so you can build amenities on it. Buffers and.
I was trying to keep it at a high level.
Yeah.
No, and the reason I'm asking is because I still can't find it, but if we support this document tonight, and in here you're recommending that a quarter acre.
We are recommending that you update the development code requirements that you have to reflect these recommendations as part of a separate follow-up process. So you would not, these requirements would not change with adoption of this plan.
Right,
It would be,
but the recommendations are in this plan, so one of the recommendations is if we wanna build on a quarter acre. Piece of property, that we would have to, just what you said, is we would have to pay a fee if the.
yeah, again, would this, adopting this plan in and of itself would not require you to do that. These are general recommendations. We're pretty clear about that in the plan. We say, these are overarching recommendations. If you want to do these things, you will go through a process of refining them and adopting them as part of your development code. So it's not automatically gonna require you to do these things.
Yeah, the adoption of this master plan will not automatically modify the development code. These are recommendations of what you can do. And then once this master plan is adopted, which is an amendment to the comprehensive plan, that allows you to go further and do the work to update the development code. And if you need to update the municipal code.
Because that's where all of these get implemented, presumably don't.
May I ask one question? Counter question, was your question about the quarter acre fee in lieu?
Is that what? Well, I had multiple questions on it, but I'm just wondering, my overall question was if we support this, the recommendations, are we therefore required to have those? So that was my question.
No, and you already allow for requiring a fee in lieu. Right now, you just say, hey, planning commission, if you think it's better for somebody to pay a fee in lieu than dedicate land, and you tell them that. So what we're suggesting is, frankly, a more formal approach. Where you embedded it in your code, but again, that would be done as part of an amendment to your development code, not at this time. So there's gonna be, I mean, you could suggest changes to this, but really the time to do that, in my opinion, would be through that separate process. Where you work out all these details and decide, is that the right threshold, a quarter acre, or should it be a third acre or a half of an acre or something like that? Okay, I will keep it. So as Fred mentioned, you're updating your comprehensive plan as part of this process too. And really, what you would be doing is updating the recreation chapter of your comprehensive plan, which currently refers to the old Parks Master Plan. So you just be updating the reference. So you're referring to the updated Parks Master Plan. So that essentially becomes the Parks and Recreation element of your comprehensive plan. So that's kind of one thing you do. We suggested within the comprehensive plan, you have an overall goal, and you have a number of policies, which should reflect what's in the Parks Master Plan. So we did recommend a few amendments or changes to those to make sure that the comprehensive plan is consistent with the Parks Master Plan. So one was just some minor language changes to the overall goal related to Parks and Recreation that's in your comprehensive plan. And then a few what I would also call fairly modest changes to the policies within the comprehensive plan related to Parks and Recreation. So one just kind of reflect the continuing nature of funding strategies. You're going to continue funding parks. You're going to continue looking at different funding strategies. Again, reference the current plan, the updated plan rather than the old plan. Make sure you're coordinating trails planning with transportation planning, incorporate some goals around climate resiliency, and then there's some policies in the plan specific to sports fields. And we really didn't hear much about that in this process. That was something that we heard a lot about when the plan was previously adopted in 2015. So we suggested prioritizing that particular policy based on what we heard during this update process. So those are the changes recommended to the comprehensive plan policies. And I'll talk a little bit about level of service and then turn it over to Matt to talk some more about that. So next one. So Matt gave a great sort of definition of level of service. It's making sure that you have enough parks and acres of parks, and really, more importantly, types of amenities to meet people's needs in the community. So one aspect, one way to measure level of service is to take an average of the number of acres of park you have per people within the community. And that's a way to measure a level of service that's been used sort of across the country for a long time. There's an organization called the National Recreation and Parks Association. They used to publish standards for that. They've really kind of gone away from using those standards or recommending applying those standards, because they've recommended or they've recognized that those conditions vary a lot in different communities, depending on sort of what other types of resources those communities have within or around them. So there's still some guidance out there on that, but we did want to include some information about this way of measuring level of service and sort of tell you how things have changed or what your things are looking like as you look into the future in terms of how many people are going to live here in the next 20 years, how many acres of parks you have now, how many acres might you have in the future. Does that seem like enough? So we did that analysis, and that's what's summarized in this table, which is in the plan. And it basically says you're doing okay, you know, you're somewhere in the recommended guidance range. If we look at how many people you have now and how many you expect to have in the next 20 years based on future population projections for this community. So that's kind of the overarching finding there. You know, you're not woefully inadequate, not don't have a huge surplus, you're kind of about somewhere in the middle. But it does depend on the type of park we're looking at to some degree. So Excellent, thank you, because yes, thanks, Dagmar. So in the spirit of aligning with those values you mentioned, the one kind of major flaw with that quantitative approach, which is good for general, like are we in the ballpark, is equity. And so in order to align with that value that the community want to approach, if you just use the math and said, oh, we have X acres of park and here's our population, you can shove all that park into one area and call it a day and you check a box. But that doesn't necessarily talk about, do people have access to it? Is it distributed throughout your community? And so we want to also on top to supplement the kind of quantitative approach that Matt talked about. We wanted to bring a qualitative approach. And so this informs how we assess your amenities and how we assess your sites, and recognizing what do people feel like everyone should have access to. Again, going back to the way we set up the engagement and the way that we set up the surveys. And they said things like picnic areas, playgrounds, walking paths, shaded areas, etc. And so we took that approach and mapped those across your town. And see, the circles are very generic, half-mile radiuses. And part of the early survey, we said, how far are you willing to walk to a park? And generally everyone said half mile or less. So we checked that kind of general best practice of a half mile with what people in your community want. And we laid that out. And so the blue dots you see is an example of what was found in the report, which is all the amenities. The blue ones are amenities in good condition, and the red ones are amenities that are present that probably need some improvements. And then you see those two kind of blank blue dots. Those are the anticipated large developments happening through your Southwest Independence concept plan and the township plan, which are slated to have new parks. And so that kind of emphasizes the importance of this land dedication and making sure the rules are set in place, because that will help your community grow your park system through these developments as your population grows. And so just kind of mapping that out, visualizing where the communities are, where the amenities are, can help you see who has access to what. And so this is a list. So we took every kind of property and trail that is off-street trail that were found previously in the transportation plan, and all of the sites that are existing or developable, and listed out all of the site deficiencies and amenities for each site and listed them as projects. And then that is what we presented to the community for the open house, for the surveys, to rank the importance or rate the importance of every single one. They didn't just pick one or two or rank them. We had a very consistent method for making sure everyone ranks each one 1 to 5, and then we compare and contrast all the projects quantitatively to see where we fell. And so we did that, and this is the result of what your community wanted. And then general project cost, and that's overall project, not just construction, it's soft costs and engineering, permitting, TIPSy, and all that stuff. And then just a general description of what it is, from an existing improvement to the trail project, etc. And then example on the next slide, I think. Oh no, this is overall system plan. That maps kind of where those parks are and where the trails are, and kind of labeling them as again key for you to reference. Next. And this is an example. Riverview Park, you might be familiar with it. It's a pretty big, famous park in the community. It was number 1 because that's where everyone went to. That was everyone was enthused about some improvements there. And so this is kind of an example concept, very non-committal place to start. Every one of these projects will go through its own design and construction process. This is not committing you to a specific design. What we're saying it here is, hey, these are the deficiencies, the amenities we feel should be updated. Here's an idea of how that could look in relationship to the existing conditions and the constraints we found, and here's how much that would cost. So that allows you to budget things, to see the general order of things, descriptions of how you can bring those up to best practices. And again, align with the ideas of the values. How do you make things equitable? How do you make sure they're resilient? How do you make sure they're feasible? How do you make sure that people are, is a way to improve people's health and well-being, right? So that was the approach for all the sites and all the projects, and we included a couple example concepts for some of the top priority projects. Next. I don't expect you to read this right now, right? I don't have a fancy graphic for this, but I wanted to reference it. And so we feel that every city needs to have a conversation when they make all these park improvements, when they add parks, when the city or the community wants new things, that it always has a maintenance budget, and it's very rarely talked about. And so we want to make sure that any improvements recognize the weight and the resources needed from staff to take care of whatever you improve. And so we wanted to include some of the kind of key amenities, features that go into parks, some recommendations in the design that can help reduce maintenance, and be mindful of maintenance in the long term, as well as some high level maintenance guidelines for allowing you to think about a little more proactive maintenance, so you're not being reactionary, which is usually a higher liability and usually costs more if you're being reactionary to being proactive. And so just some general guidance for staff to consider and for the design process to read through and just understand what things could go into there that could help maintenance through the design process. So that's it. And the appendix just has descriptions of all the parts, just in case we can reference it. So yeah, that's a very abbreviated version of that full report. And each of the sections is fleshed out for every single site that we looked at. Yeah. There's some questions.
Question.
Yes.
And for Mr. Fisher, if we improve any park and add a restroom, do we have a plan based on the graffiti issues that we have dealt with at Riverview Park to maybe add security along with that, meaning a camera or something like that?
I don't believe that we had cameras included in any of the park improvements. We just focused on everybody's gonna behave and we're building something really nice, so please don't trash it.
There is a contingency in case you wanted to add camera, like maybe.
There's a planning level contingency that's built into everything that's in there, so. But
fund is the parks in?
the parks is in the general fund, and any capacity increasing is parks STCs. But it wasn't specifically called out that we need to put up cameras to monitor vandalism in the city.
I'm just worried about all the costs that we've incurred from cleaning up the graffiti around town, that's just at the
It's been
restaurant.
a lot.
Counselor Boyer?
Thank you for your presentation. I just want to ask, in your plans, do you offer any type of guidance for the cities that are looking at budget cuts coming up and that sort of thing, looking ahead?
They'd be millionaires.
Right?
Their next business model.
What to do over here? There is a section at the end, which we did not present today, for alternative funding strategies. Grants, and stuff like that you can go after. They, in the last few years, they've been a little more challenging. But you know, these things are cyclical as well. And so what we have, not necessarily formalized in the plan, but something that we as landscape architects do to talk to cities is encourage cities to think and promote about their parks and open space as infrastructure. And that they have a value to your community, and use that to creatively go after funding that maybe you wouldn't normally think about, like public health funding. For example. And so, you know, we are working with cities all around the region to treat city tree canopy as infrastructure, to create parks and open space as infrastructure, because it's doing more than just looking nice. It's cleaning your air, it's reducing your heat, it's reducing your energy bills, it's giving people a place to exercise. And so thinking creatively around that could open some doors that maybe haven't been opened before.
There's actually on the last 2 pages of the master plan, potential funding strategies for general fund, system development charges, private development dedications, bonds and levies. Potential other sources include park maintenance, utility fees, user fees, parking fees, event fees, donations, volunteer maintenance, labor. And then they list a series of agencies to look at for potential grants. If you're looking at a very specific project, try to target, and that's where Marshall comes into this. We have a very specific project, and he's gonna go out and look through all of those to see if they can target a grant that we could be successful in getting.
Yeah, another thing, sorry, just to finish that thought, another thing that we tried to do is these project values, you know, health, equity, resilience. These are typically grant requirements. And so aligning the strategy and the language and the plan around what we're seeing out there for, you know, equity grants or human health grants or resilience grants through the previous Inflation Reduction Act that saw a lot of open space and park funding. You know, those will come around again. And so just positioning yourself to being able to talk about parks in that way, I think can move you in.
Counselor Source?
Have you worked with the communities who have worked with corporate sponsorships of parks? This park sponsored by Verizon, those kind of things, and if you have, how have those relationships worked?
Personally, no.
Okay. My hometown had a multiple mile kind of trail that was corporate sponsorship. And, you know, I graduated from high school and left and went back where it really matured. So I've always been curious about that partnership of, is there a way for business partners to help support something that is so, you know, important to a community and is, from my perspective, critical infrastructure. So just curious about it, that ever run into that partnerships.
I would imagine we would deal with that at the operations level, like more unlike the city would be getting sponsorship of
Sure.
Carter, Packer, person identifying that in the arts.
I think I've said.
No, absolutely, yeah.
And I had a similar question relative to not selling park dedication, but offering to name a park for someone, not necessarily a corporation, but someone who would make a substantial investment either for themselves, and I know that's only happened once in this community, that a park was named for somebody who was still living, but also a dedication to your family or relatives.
Council Roden had a question?
I'm a mom, first and foremost, and have been to every park in our community. Hosted passport programs in the past for kids to moms to be with dads to go on parents to our parks. So I've been to all of them, and my heart since becoming on city council was to try to promote our sports parks, which has now been eliminated from our master plans, and to have a safe swimming pool so that kids can learn to swim and not be in danger of cooling off in the river. And I know that that's my personal issues. I'm very disappointed that the plan does not look at our 2040 plan that we all on city council agreed to is something that we would like to be a priority, which would be promoting the pool and promoting the sports parks and getting the whole idea of the sports parks. And we had letters from dozens of community members saying that they wanted us to research the sports parks. So when I read this plan and the sports parks have been lined out, it makes me sad and it makes me not happy with the plan. I appreciate you teaching me about the equity language that you need in these plans. Because I don't think anybody in Independence would come here and say we need equity for parks, but if that's what's needed in grant writing, then I appreciate that education. But And then you also said that we're not going to piecemeal projects. We're going to not do a project a little bit here and a little bit there. We're gonna fund an entire project before we go on with it. Is that correct in this plan?
Correct, and to get back to what you were talking about before, this master plan was being developed while the question around the pool property and the soccer fields was in play. And so when we initially got comments back from the community, they noted that, you know, do something with the pool, do something with the soccer fields. After that, the council opted to place the properties up for sale and then pulled back on the pool property. So in trying to honor the comments that we received from the community, and that these weren't a done deal, the properties weren't sold during the master plan. We left those in. If Myra, can you turn to page 482 of the packet? There you go. So pool was, from the community standpoint, was ranked number 2, and the ball field area was ranked number 3. We left those in there in the master plan because if you take them out, it's harder to add them back in. Also, you can do what's called a minor amendment related to the project. So if, like, let's say, I'm just gonna spitball here. Let's say a group gets together and they want to do a recreational facility and a swimming pool at the pool property, okay? Leaving it in here allows you to go back and modify this, or you can modify language now. But if we had taken it out, you would have had to done a much more comprehensive public hearing to actually modify the master plan. So we just left it in there, but from a staff standpoint, we're looking at Riverview Park was the #1 park. It got the most votes, far outweighed everything else. So the whole intent was to, because this is one of the comments, or some of the comments we got back, is you do a little here and a little there, and one of the problems we had was you put something in and then you go to design a park and it doesn't match with everything else. So now you gotta either tear it out or move it or modify a bunch of other things. So the intent was just to go pick the top priority project, fund it and build it, and then go to the next priority project, fund it and build it. So you're not doing this piecemeal and putting things in and having to tear them back out again.
Is this set? Oh, sorry.
I was just wanting to say that the Independence Vision 2040 was a plan that was done in 2020. Pool died in 2023. So we couldn't predict the future. And when you have a pool that's run by diesel fuel and it dies, we need a huge infusion of cash to fix that. And we can't. And our voters spoke to not pass a levy for very, very tiny amount of funding last year, let alone the millions of dollars it would take to fix a pool. So I think you can't have your cake and eat it too on some of these projects. I think we need to talk about what's feasible.
And I do think it's important, Gerald, like you, Mr. Fisher, like you noticed, by keeping a placeholder, I mean, if somebody did come in, a funder came in and said, we'll build and run a facility for you, we have the option of being able to go in and accommodate that as part of the master plan, but given the fiscal realities that we and other communities are facing right now, I think it's understandable that we are facing this master plan sort of on current realities that we have.
Some other kind of minor comments on some parts of the concern. I also have a child, or I have a child, who's learned to swim, and I know that's really important. The other benefits of a pool is cooling off heat days. And so we did include a splash pad option in Henry Hill Park to kind of supplement some of the benefits that a pool would bring, obviously not the full benefits. but something that it might be a little more affordable and maintainable for your community, to provide, cooling for people on a hot day. And then we also, included reference to the previous study. It's already a study that he did, so we didn't want to reinvent the wheel on North Riverview Park of it being a sports complex, and we did reference that. And we did reference some of the feasibilities of that report, just based off it being in floodplain and how much maintenance and issues that would be. So we wanted to reference that past work to include that in the conversation, and again, keep it in the line, noting that the community did want to still prioritize it and take another look at that.
Just one thing, on my page 229, it has on attachment B. It pretty much removes the city from prioritizing the pool, the Henry Hill, and the sports park development. So it would take, and probably would anyway, but it would take a private citizen or business to come in and look at revitalizing those two procedures. I mean, those two number priorities, 2 and 3. When if we had kept it in our goals to address those things, then maybe we could have, we could have, instead of keeping a line item on here, on what's on our screen, we could have used our grant writer to try to look for some money to find money for the pool and for the park. So my concern is the language in attachment B of crossing out the independents shall prioritize, the maintenance of the fields and providing facilities. Is that will no longer be a goal of ours, right? Madam Mayor.
Was that a question to staff?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, we're on with it.
So we didn't have very clear and concrete knowledge of where this was gonna go for those two properties. We knew they were put up for sale. We knew that the council voted on that, and that was the direction they went. But they weren't done deals, and when you're trying to do a master plan and you're dealing with what ifs, it's very difficult for us to go out and say, well, we're gonna go ahead and spend the time and money on costing out and putting together a design for a sports facility or a pool, and have the consultants spend time and money on that, and then turn around and have those properties sold. It's a waste. So instead of doing that, what we did is we left the priorities so that the council understood community priority. And because we left it in, it allows you to make a modification if you choose to. If somebody comes in and says, I just won Powerball and I want to build a pool and I want to fund the whole thing, then great, you can add it back in. If somehow the city partners with a nonprofit or some other group and they say, hey, we've got money and we want to pair it with you guys, and we want to build a facility, but we want you to be partners, then the council at a future date can make a determination of, okay, what do we need to modify? How do we need to tweak this one page or this one table in the master plan to accommodate that? So it's not off the table. It's still available to you, but there was no way we were going to be able to complete the master plan without concrete direction. And lack of concrete direction, we put this in as you have options. You now have options in the future versus, okay, let's just go ahead and anchor the master plan and wait for another 2 or 3 years or whatever. And then we'll adopt the master plan after we figured out what's going to happen with those properties.
May I jump in? Were you asking specifically about attachment B that says recreation at the top of it? It's on page 543 of the 551 page packet. This is specifically the comprehensive plan language. And so these folks recommended changes to the comprehensive plan language based on what they heard from the public, as Matt Hasty brought up in his presentation. This reflects that language completely. Now, I will say this language in no way forecloses the opportunity for sports fields. As you can see, policy 4 says independent shall create recreational opportunities for visitors that can enhance the city's economic vitality. That could absolutely be sports fields. You could argue that, also policy number 5, independent shall continue to plan for development of new parks and or enhancements to existing parks and future growth areas and new developments consistent with the park system master plan. Again, that could be sports fields. And so and also independent shall partner with community groups to continue to help maintain and enhance parks and recreation facilities and programs. There's no foreclosing of sports fields. What they specifically were addressing was that through their outreach, they did not hear much response with regard to sports fields. And so they had the language reflect what they saw in their outreach.
And so, my understanding from a meeting I had with City Manager West a long time ago is that city staff doesn't have the time to focus on particular areas of the old parks plan, because it doesn't give us a plan to go forward in particular areas. And so when we don't have a plan in this to go forward with saving our pool and developing our sports parks, then why would staff waste their valuable time if priority is the river park?
I wanna do a quick timeout here, because we're gonna get off track real quick with this. I think we also have the reality of it's almost 9:30, we still have an executive session to get to. These questions are important, so I'm happy to stay on track with that, but I do want us to be focused on. We are talking about a master plan, we are not talking about specific language that precludes things from happening in the future. These master plans are meant to be guiding documents. They can be changed and updated over time, given existing circumstances. This is what is being recommended now. Things can be revisited, they can be brought back. But I mean, to be perfectly honest, you know, just as well as everyone else, what our fiscal realities with the general fund is. Unless we do get a private partner or a sponsor or somebody that comes in and hands us a windfall of money, we are not building a pool. I mean, we have discussed that at length in multiple meetings and work sessions, so. I think given some of those realities, I would just like to invite us to keep the conversation to the agenda item at hand, and we are trying to pass or adopt the master plan tonight, and we have consultants who have been very patient and have still a ways to go to get tonight themselves to get home, so I do want to make sure your questions are getting addressed. We have some other questions, comments on this end. So with that. Questions?
I'll make it very brief. When you make plans for something, you make plans based on wants, desires, and visions of a future. Sometimes those things don't work out. We've already had a company come in and do a feasibility study for the sports fields, and unless we have the funds to pay millions, we don't have the ability to build those out right now with what is in our general fund. And this body, first and foremost, has an obligation to be a good steward of the city finances. It's great to be a good neighbor, it's great to plan for the future, it's great to want all these things, but we have to safeguard the funding first and adjust the plans as, just like you would with your home budget, as what's affordable to you at the time and what you need to save for the future and what you need to relook at.
Further questions, comments? Further questions, comments from this end? Alright, Anything further from staff report?
Yes, please. I did get one comment related to this. That is on the dais in front of you.
Yes.
You should have received it. Also, we ran all of the normal CB stuff that we need to do associated with this. We publish this in the newspaper, all of that sort of stuff. Just wanted to clarify that all of that has been done as part of this legislative amendment.
And Erin McIntosh is the Parks Board Chair, and she's been the full advocate that's been coming to meetings.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yes. We do know that we have that written testimony. We do not have any other public testimony tonight. Wait, so we can skip that part. Any remaining questions? All right, with that, if there's no objection, I will now close the record in public hearing at 9:29. Thank you for your presentation. All right, what is next? Anything else on the public hearing? Public hearing's done. Okay, so now
It's done, so then it's
7.4.
7.4,
Okay.
which is the council bill. To consider the public hearing that you folks just considered. The council bill starts on. Uh-oh. Geez, I gotta go way back up. On three, I believe it's 376 of your packet, and basically it's a first reading, second reading sort of approach based on the plan that you were just discussing.
Mayor, I wanna make a modification to that motion, please. This is based on conversation with the city, the sale on the pool has been on hiatus while the city works with community partners, I assume that's YMCA.
Yes, and
To find a solution for that property that could include a community center or a pool. Or maybe both, who knows? So by revising this and leaving it in the master plan, it allows the staff to continue to work with that partner toward a solution and seek out any grant opportunities that could support that. So the motion I'm gonna make is I move to modify the description of the priority project number 2, which is the pool, in the table in chapter 7.3 project prioritization on page 105 of the plan, to complete a pool area recreation plan, not build anything, do a plan, with an assumed cost of $75,000 and adopt the master system, parks system master plan as amended. I can reread that if anyone wants to.
Second.
So we have a motion by Councilor Core and a second by Councilor Source. Any questions?
Where did you come up with the $75,000?
City estimate.
So you worked with the city on this proposal, or?
I had questions about it.
We are, we continue to work on the pool and recreation area, with those agencies. And just prior to the meeting, we realized that an amendment would be appropriate or a modification would be appropriate. And Councilor Core was open to the suggestion.
I don't understand why you would have private conversations with one counselor about amending this, why wouldn't you just bring it forth yourself to say that this change needs to happen? I don't understand why this back alley dealing stuff.
There is no back alley dealings. Let's keep focused on the agenda.
I'm being focused on the agenda, you can stop telling me what to focus on. I don't understand why we would have.
Why is it substantiated?
That's substantiated.
About back alley.
Acknowledge that you guys had this conversation and planned to bring forth this amendment and this change without telling anybody on council that you were doing.
So we just told you, okay, I'm really tired. It's almost 10 o'clock and I'm really tired of you attacking me and my staff. You are, stop.
This back alley.
Counselor,
Trying to explain.
will you let me explain, please?
Yes, you guys.
It is
you guys
appropriate to talk to a council member to bring a motion that I know that they're interested in. Simple as that. That brings it to the council's attention so that the council can make a decision in open council.
I just don't.
You don't talk to a quorum, you can talk to one. It's as simple as that.
And the motion is in concert with what Ms. McIntosh recommends. It is something that we've talked about ad nauseum in budget committee meetings, that this community wants a pool. And before we go forward and try to build a pool, we need to formulate a plan to do that.
So the letter that Erin wrote to us, she already knew that this amendment was going to happen?
I don't think so.
No. So she agreed with the plan without funding the pool, and you guys have now changed it.
She would not disagree with this.
She's not
Councilor Rhodes. This
disagreeing
makes
with
it
the letter.
stronger.
It is saying that she wants us to make sure that we prioritize the pool.
And the motion
You
should
should
be
stop thinking it's a personal attack because I have questions.
Councilor, it's not like everybody's personal attack that we say to you, so for you to say that to City Manager West is ridiculous.
That's not true. I didn't say anything ridiculous.
You told her to stop attacking you. You say that every time we say
I
something.
did,
you-
I don't understand why they
Counselors, counselors, counselors. We need to stay focused on this agenda. We need to put personal discussions and discrepancies aside. Keep it professional. Counselors are allowed to have conversations with City Manager West. I know that pretty much every single one of these counselors takes her up on that opportunity to be able to have conversations. We do have to work within the whole serial meeting thing, and so City Manager West is not able to always send out conversations to everybody, and there are times when she knows that if somebody is interested and will help pull a motion forward, that she will contact them and have a conversation with them, especially when they can do it in a timely manner. We are focused on the agenda at hand. We still have an executive session to get through. We have a motion on the table. We're going to ask
Councilor Soar seconded it.
questions focused on that. Any further questions, comments regarding this motion on the table?
I'm just double checking that it was appropriate for what Fred needed.
Okay,
I call for the question.
great. Thank you so much. Roll call.
Councilor Court,
Aye.
Councilor Morton,
Aye.
Councilor Martin Lewis,
Aye.
Councilor Wamer,
I,
Councilor Rhodes opposed, Councilor Schwartz.
Can you state your reasoning for opposing?
Second.
Would you like to please state your reason for opposing? Because we are actually bringing something forward that helps all the conversations that you just asked us about.
I need to research this. Which Counselor Corbett for.
So are you opposed to them doing
I'm
a
opposed to
study?
multiple things.
Okay, alright. Motion fails.
No, passes.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I think I'm unanimous.
Come back in April.
Right, I'm thinking it's not unanimous.
We're good now,
Um,
come back for a
yes.
second.
And I'll read the correct title of it, adoption of park system master plan update and related amendments to the
Alright, thank you, that will come back before us. And again, thank you very much for your presentation tonight and for sticking with us. I know it's been a long night, and you have sat through many things, so we appreciate that. Appreciate all your hard work with this. I hope you have a safe drive on tonight.
And say get something to eat, but everything rolls up there.
I know. I don't know, there's crispy chicken on the way to town. All right, we have one more agenda item. I need to read the script here. All right. Legislative hearing script. This evening, the city council will hold a public hearing on legislative, no. So many different. Wrong script. Long night. Agenda item number 8, executive session. The Independent City Council will now meet in executive session for the purpose of conferring with the city attorney concerning legal rights and duties regarding litigation likely to be filed. The executive session is held pursuant to ORS 119-6602H, which allows the council to meet in executive session. Representatives from the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. Representatives from the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state general subject of discussion as previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session. At this time, the council will adjourn to the conference room for the duration of the executive session. Once the executive session has adjourned, we will return to open session in the council chambers. Are we going to the form?
yeah.
Alright.
Okay, we're off.
Alright, we are reconvening. Re-adjourning, whatever we wanna call it. It's been a day, it's been a night, alright, we are on to. Item number 9.1, litigation settlement. City Manager West.
Thank you, council. We just came back from executive session. As you can see from the staff report, we were in litigation with CG Contractors and we reached a settlement. I'm looking for authority to effectuate that settlement as we discussed.
I move that the council authorize the city manager to effectuate the settlement as discussed in the executive session.
Second.
We have a motion by Council Corr, second by Council Moore. Any further discussion? Well. Allowed under executive session.
Okay.
You're done? Yep. Roll call.
Council Torres.
Aye.
Council Roger. Aye. Council Wellbear.
Aye.
Council Martin Willis.
Aye.
Council Morton.
Aye.
Four.
Aye. All right, thank you very much.
Go forth and effectuate.
Thank you, council.
Any very brief, quick, council announcements?
I'm gonna be attending the Older Adult Summit tomorrow, it's the third annual one, and I hope to bring some information back at the next council meeting.
I am going, over from Western to the seminar on combating anti-Semitism that is hosted by the Portland State of Brandeis University for the next couple of days. And I think it could be a good opportunity for bring back some of what we learned about in a larger context of preventing hate. Look forward to sharing.
With that, thank you for hanging in there, meeting is adjourned.